You found the Stealth Podcast. Tonight, we'll travel through dark and lonely stories. Where in the world are you watching from? What time is it there? Subscribe and leave your like to support us. Let's begin. My name is Maxwell, 39 years old, originally from Spokane. I've been living the van life for almost 3 years now, ever since I quit my soul-crushing insurance job. My converted Sprinter van isn't fancy, but it's home, complete with a simple kitchenette, a memory foam mattress, and enough solar power to keep my essentials running. After wandering through most of the western states, I decided to spend a few weeks exploring the Olympic Peninsula in Washington. The rain had been relentless for days, drumming against the metal roof of my van and turning the forest roads into slick mud trails. I'd been hoping to catch a break in the weather to hike some of the trails around Lake Crescent, but Mother Nature wasn't cooperating. Instead, I found myself navigating deeper into the wooded areas west of Port Angeles, searching for a quiet spot to park for the night where I wouldn't be hassled. The narrow Forest Service road seemed promising, far enough from the main highway to avoid any patrol cars, but not so remote that I'd get stuck if the rain continued. The thick canopy overhead provided some relief from the downpour as I eased my van into a small clearing that looked like an abandoned logging site. The spot was perfect, level ground, natural coverage from the trees, and no overnight parking signs. As I settled in for the evening, the rain finally subsided, replaced by an eerie silence that made the forest feel unnaturally still. I heated up some chili on my portable stove and cracked open a beer, scrolling through hiking routes on my tablet while I ate. The quiet after days of constant rainfall was a welcome change, though something about it felt off, like the forest was holding its breath. Just as I was getting ready to turn in for the night, my phone pinged with a weather alert. Severe thunderstorms expected overnight, possible flash flooding in low-lying areas. Great. I stepped outside to check my surroundings, making sure I wasn't parked in any potential water path. The air felt heavy with moisture, and distant thunder rumbled beyond the mountains. Under the beam of my headlamp, I noticed something odd, fresh tire tracks cutting through the mud nearby. Someone else had been here recently. I told myself it was probably just another van life enthusiast seeking shelter, or maybe Forest Service personnel doing rounds. But a nagging feeling settled in my gut as I climbed back into my van and locked the doors. Out of habit, I checked that my bear spray and multi-tool were within easy reach before turning off the lights. Through my small skylight, I watched the clouds rush across the sliver of visible sky, occasionally illuminated by distant lightning. Sleep came fitfully that night, my dreams punctuated by sounds that seemed to straddle the line between reality and imagination. The crack of branches, the soft squish of footsteps in mud, the faint metallic sound of something scraping against the side of the van. Each time I jerked awake, I'd peer through the blackout curtains covering my windows, seeing nothing but darkness and the occasional flash of lightning. Around 3 a.m., I woke to the unmistakable sound of an engine, not close enough to be right next to me, but definitely within the vicinity. Adrenaline instantly coursed through me as I sat up, straining to hear over the renewed patter of rain. The engine revved a few times, then fell silent. I counted the minutes, waiting for headlights to sweep across my windows or the sound of a car door slamming, but nothing came. Just the rain and that unsettling silence of the forest. By morning, exhaustion had won out over vigilance, and I'd fallen into a deep sleep. The bright light of dawn filtering through my skylight finally woke me. As I rubbed my eyes and reached for water, I noticed something that sent ice through my veins. Muddy handprints smeared across my side window, too high to have been made by an animal. Someone had been standing outside my van while I slept. I stared at those handprints, my heart pounding against my ribs. They weren't just random smudges. They looked deliberate, like someone had pressed their entire hand against the glass, fingers spread wide. I grabbed my phone to take photos, my hands trembling as I tried to document what I was seeing. Who the hell would be out here in the middle of nowhere, touching my van in the dead of night? The rain had stopped, leaving the forest dripping and misty. I needed to get out of there. Fast. I pulled on my boots and jacket, not bothering with breakfast, and jumped into the driver's seat. The engine sputtered once before roaring to life. Thank God, and I backed out of the clearing faster than was probably safe. The van fishtailed slightly on the muddy road, but I managed to keep control as I navigated back toward the main Forest Service road. As I drove, I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see someone emerge from the trees. Nothing but mist and dripping foliage. I was probably overreacting. Maybe it was just some drunk local kids messing with a random van they found in the woods. Or perhaps another camper who got lost and was looking for help. The rational explanations calmed me down somewhat, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The Forest Service road seemed longer than I remembered from yesterday. I should have reached the highway by now. A sinking feeling grew in my stomach as I realized I might have taken a wrong turn in my haste to leave. The road was getting narrower, the trees pressing in closer on both sides, branches occasionally scraping against the van's exterior. I slowed down, looking for a place to turn around, when I spotted something that made my blood run cold. Fresh tire tracks cutting across the muddy road ahead of me. The same pattern I'd seen back at the clearing. I stopped the van, engine idling. Those tracks looked like they'd come from a big vehicle, maybe a truck or an SUV. The driver had pulled off the road and into the dense forest, somehow maneuvering between trees that seemed too close together to allow passage. Who would do that? And why? I debated turning around right there, but the road was too narrow. I'd have to continue forward until I found a wider spot. The road eventually opened into another small clearing, this one with a makeshift fire pit at its center, stones arranged in a circle, blackened wood in the middle. Someone used this spot regularly. Empty beer cans were scattered nearby, and what looked like animal bones were piled at the edge of the clearing. Not unusual for a hunting area, but something about the setup felt wrong. The pit looked recently used, maybe even from last night. I carefully turned the van around, relief washing over me as I pointed back the way I came. That's when I noticed something hanging from a tree branch at the edge of the clearing, a small carved wooden figure dangling from what looked like fishing line. It spun slowly in the light breeze, a crude human shape with exaggerated limbs and no face. Probably just some weird forest art, but coming after the handprints on my window, it sent another chill down my spine. Heading back the way I came, I finally found the correct turn I'd missed and made it to the highway. The normality of passing cars and the occasional roadside business was a welcome sight. I pulled into a gas station just outside of Port Angeles, my hands still shaking slightly as I filled up the tank. I decided to grab some coffee and regroup, try to make sense of what happened. As I waited for my coffee at the counter, I scrolled through local news on my phone. Nothing unusual reported in the area. You camping out by Lake Crescent? The question came from the attendant, a weathered-looking man in his 60s who nodded toward my van through the window. When I confirmed, his expression changed subtly. "Be careful out there," he said, sliding my coffee across the counter. Some strange folks live deep in those woods. Not everyone's friendly to outsiders. Before I could ask what he meant, he was called away by another customer. I left with my coffee and an unsettled feeling that wouldn't go away. I spent the day in Port Angeles, trying to shake off the unease from the previous night. I walked around the harbor, ate lunch at a local seafood joint, and even visited the small museum downtown. Normal tourist stuff. But my mind kept returning to those handprints, the wooden figure, the warning from the gas station attendant. By late afternoon, I decided to move on to a different area altogether. A campground near Sequim seemed safer than another night in the forest. The campground was nearly empty when I arrived. Just a few RVs parked in the distance, and one other van similar to mine at the far end of the lot. I paid for a spot with hookups, showered in the facility building, and tried to relax. The normalcy of the campground, with its designated sites and bathrooms and occasional passing ranger, felt reassuring after the isolation of the forest clearing. I cooked dinner outside my van for the first time in days, enjoying the fading light and the distant view of the mountains. As darkness fell, I noticed movement from the other van. A tall, lanky man packing up a folding chair. We exchanged brief nods, that universal acknowledgement between van dwellers. Later, as I was washing my dishes at the communal sink, he approached. "Nice setup you've got," he said, gesturing toward my van. His name was Derek, he told me, and he'd been living on the road for about 5 years. We chatted casually about van builds and good spots to park in the area. "I usually stick to established campgrounds around here," Derek said, drawing his own plate. "The Forest Service land can get a bit sketchy." When I asked what he meant, he hesitated. "Just some weird locals," he finally said. There's a group that lives off-grid way back in the national forest. They don't like visitors much. He described how he'd had an encounter last year, woke up to people circling his van, shining flashlights inside. When he confronted them, they claimed to be checking for illegal campers, but had no official identification. Sleep didn't come easily that night, despite the relative safety of the campground. I kept thinking about what Derek had said, how it aligned with the gas station attendant's warning. Around midnight, I was jolted awake by the sound of a vehicle pulling into the spot next to mine. Through a gap in my curtains, I saw a mud-splattered pickup truck, its headlights cutting off abruptly. Two men got out, speaking in low voices. Something about their movements seemed furtive, deliberate. I lay perfectly still, watching through the narrow gap as they walked around their truck, occasionally glancing toward my van. They didn't set up camp or pull out any gear, just stood there, smoking and talking quietly. One of them walked over to the back of my van, and I heard a soft tapping sound, like he was testing the lock. My heart nearly stopped. The bear spray was still by my bed, but what good would it do if they actually tried to get in? After what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, they got back in their truck and drove away, headlights off until they reached the campground exit. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, my mind racing with possibilities. Could they be the same people from the forest? How had they found me? Was I being paranoid, seeing connections where there were none? Morning brought no answers, but it did bring Derek knocking on my window. "You okay?" he asked when I slid the door open. "Saw those guys last night. They didn't bother you, did they?" When I described their behavior, his face darkened. "Same truck I saw last year," he confirmed. "Black Dodge with a dented fender?" I nodded, and he pulled out his phone. I got a picture of their license plate back then, reported it to the Rangers, but nothing came of it. The photo on Derek's phone showed a Washington plate, caked with mud, but still readable. "They're part of that group I mentioned," he said, lowering his voice though no one else was nearby. "They call themselves the Guardians of the Olympic. Some kind of extreme environmental group, but rumor has it they've gone way beyond tree-sitting and protests. There's talk of them sabotaging logging equipment, threatening surveyors, even attacking hikers they think are damaging the forest." I felt sick as I realized the implications. Had I unknowingly camped in an area they considered their territory? Was that why they tracked me to the campground? Derek suggested we report the incident to the campground office, but I was hesitant. What could I say? That some men looked at my van? That I had a weird feeling? It sounded ridiculous, even to me. Still, the coincidence was too strong to ignore. "I think I'm going to head out," I told Derek. "Maybe go south for a while." As I packed up my van, I noticed something tucked under my windshield wiper, a small piece of paper folded tightly. With shaking hands, I unfolded it to find a crude map drawn in what looked like charcoal. It showed what appeared to be the Olympic Peninsula, with a large X marked in the forest west of Lake Crescent, exactly where I'd spent that first night. Above the X, 3 words were written in jagged capital letters: "Leave or else." I showed the note to Derek, who immediately urged me to go to the police. "This is a direct threat," he said, his face grim. "Those guys aren't just harmless forest weirdos." We drove separately to the Port Angeles police station, where an officer took my statement and the note as evidence. The officer seemed concerned, but not surprised. "We've had reports about this group before," he explained. "They usually just intimidate people enough to make them leave the area, but there have been a few cases of vandalism, theft." The officer advised me to stay out of remote areas for a while and to keep moving. "Don't establish a pattern," he said. "They mainly target people they think are setting up semi-permanent camps in the forest. Tourists who stay a night and move on aren't usually bothered." It wasn't much reassurance, but I tried to take comfort in the fact that the police were aware of the situation. I thanked Derek for his help, and we exchanged numbers before parting ways. He was heading east toward Spokane, while I planned to drive south toward Olympia. I spent that night at a well-lit truck stop just off the highway, surrounded by the comforting sounds of other travelers. The normalcy of trucks coming and going, people walking their dogs in the designated pet area, the fluorescent glow of the convenience store, it all helped calm my nerves. I slept better than I had in days, though I still woke at every loud noise or bright light that swept across my curtains. The next morning dawned clear and bright, a welcome change from the dreary weather earlier in the week. I decided to drive straight through to Olympia, maybe even continue on to Portland if I still felt uneasy. The open road had always been therapeutic for me. one of the reasons I'd chosen this lifestyle, and I hoped the miles between me and the Olympic Peninsula would help clear my head. I was about an hour south of Port Angeles when I first noticed the black pickup in my rearview mirror. It was far back, maybe 5 or 6 cars behind me, but something about it caught my attention, the same dented front fender Derek had mentioned. A chill ran down my spine as I watched it maintain a consistent distance behind me, never getting closer, but never falling back either. Coincidence, I told myself. The highway was the main route south. It made sense that others would be traveling the same way. But when I took the exit for a rest area, needing to stretch my legs and use the bathroom, the pickup took the same exit. I quickly pulled back onto the highway without stopping, heart racing. The pickup followed, now only 3 cars behind me. No way to deny it now, they were following me. I pressed the accelerator, pushing the van faster than I usually drove it, weaving through traffic to put more distance between us. The pickup kept pace easily, its powerful engine clearly outmatching my van. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, when I realized with horror that I had no service. The highway was cutting through a remote stretch of forest with no cell coverage. The pickup was gaining now, close enough that I could see 2 figures in the cab, the same men from the campground. The driver flashed his high beams at me, a clear signal to pull over. Instead, I floored it, pushing my van to its limits as I spotted an upcoming exit. Maybe I could find a police station, a busy store, anywhere with people. The exit led to a small town I didn't recognize, its main street lined with closed businesses and few pedestrians. I took random turns, hoping to lose the pickup, but it stayed right behind me, close enough now that I could hear the roar of its engine. In desperation, I pulled into the parking lot of a small diner that still had lights on, relief washing over me at the sight of cars parked outside. I barely had the van in park before I was out the door, sprinting toward the entrance. The pickup screeched to a halt behind me, blocking my van. I burst into the diner, startling the few patrons inside. "Call the police," I gasped to the startled waitress. "Those men outside are following me, threatening me." The diner fell silent as everyone turned to look out the windows at the pickup. To my confusion, the truck was already backing up, pulling away from the parking lot. One of the patrons, a burly man in a flannel shirt, stood up and walked to the window. "That's Scott Remington's truck," he said to no one in particular. "What did you do to piss off the Remingtons?" The way he said the name made it clear this wasn't a casual question. "I didn't do anything," I said, still catching my breath. "They've been following me since the Olympic Peninsula. I think they're part of some group called the Guardians." The diner erupted in murmurs at this, people exchanging knowing looks. The waitress brought me a glass of water, her expression both concerned and wary. "You should call the sheriff," she said. "Those Remington boys have been trouble since high school, but this Guardian business has made them worse." While we waited for the sheriff, an older man at the counter turned to me. "They probably think you're with one of the logging companies," he said. "Been a lot of tension since the new permits were issued. The Guardians see themselves as protectors of the forest, but they're really just looking for excuses to cause trouble." He went on to explain that the Remington family had lived in the area for generations, originally as loggers themselves until the restrictions increased. Now they were the unofficial leaders of the Guardians, recruiting other disaffected locals to their cause. When the sheriff finally arrived, he took my statement with a tired expression that suggested he'd heard similar stories before. "I'll have a word with the Remingtons," he promised, though his tone lacked conviction. "But my jurisdiction ends at the county line. If you're heading south, you'll be out of my reach soon enough." He advised me to stick to main roads, stay in populated areas, and report any further incidents to the local authorities immediately. As I walked back to my van, the sheriff close behind, I noticed something that made my blood freeze. A small wooden figure, identical to the one I'd seen hanging in the forest clearing, was now dangling from my side mirror. The sheriff frowned when I pointed it out. "That's new," he said, carefully removing it with a pen. "I'll add this to the report. You'd best get moving before they circle back." I drove straight through to Olympia without stopping, checking my mirrors obsessively every few minutes. The black pickup didn't reappear, but the wooden figure had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. It wasn't just that they'd found me at the diner. They'd had time to leave their mark, their warning, while everyone was inside. The message was clear: we can find you anywhere. Olympia should have felt safe, a decent-sized city with plenty of people around. but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I parked in a busy Walmart lot for the night, positioned under a bright light with my doors locked and bear spray in hand. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by every passing car or distant shout. By morning, exhaustion had settled deep in my bones, making simple tasks like brushing my teeth feel monumental. I needed a real plan, not just running south in a panic. After some thought, I decided to take the ferry from Olympia across to the eastern side of Puget Sound. It would put a physical barrier between me and the Remingtons, and the more populated areas around Seattle might offer some anonymity. The ferry terminal was busy that morning, tourists, commuters, families with children, and I felt some of my tension ease as I blended into the crowd. As I waited for boarding to begin, I scrolled through my phone, researching the guardians of the Olympic. There wasn't much online, just a few local news articles about protests against new logging permits and one vague reference to vandalism suspected to be linked to environmental extremists. Nothing about threatening campers or following people across counties. It made me question whether I was overreacting, seeing connections where there might be none. My phone pinged with a text from Derek. "You get to Olympia okay?" I responded quickly, telling him about being followed and the figure on my mirror. His reply was immediate. "Get off the peninsula completely. Those guys are serious trouble." He shared a link to a forum for Vanlife enthusiasts where others had posted similar experiences in the Olympic National Forest area. Unexplained damage to vehicles, threatening notes, the same wooden figures left as warnings. The ferry ride was uneventful, the gentle sway of the boat and the expansive view of the water gradually calming my frayed nerves. By the time we docked on the eastern shore, I'd almost convinced myself that I was safe, that the Remingtons and their guardians wouldn't follow me this far. I found a small campground near Bremerton and paid for 2 nights, the idea of staying put for a while suddenly appealing after days of constant movement. That evening, I walked into town for dinner, enjoying the simple pleasure of being among normal people going about their lives. The restaurant was cozy, a local place with photographs of fishing boats lining the walls. I lingered over my meal, savoring the taste of food I hadn't prepared on a tiny camping stove. It was nearly dark when I started back toward the campground, the streets growing quieter as shops closed for the night. I was about halfway back when I noticed a truck parked at the curb ahead of me. Not the black Dodge from before, but a dark green Ford with mud spattering its sides. Something about it made me cross to the opposite sidewalk, my pace quickening. As I passed, I glanced inside and froze. On the dashboard was a wooden figure, identical to the ones I'd seen before. My heart pounded as I hurried past, resisting the urge to run. It could be a coincidence, I told myself. The figures might be some local craft, sold in tourist shops all over Washington. But when I reached the campground and approached my van, I knew it wasn't a coincidence. My side door was slightly ajar, just by an inch or so, not enough to be obvious to a casual observer, but I always made sure it was firmly closed. Someone had been inside. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and called the local police, then Derek. While I waited for the police to arrive, I stood a safe distance from my van, watching for any movement inside or around it. The police arrived quickly, 2 officers who took my concerns seriously after I explained the background. They approached my van cautiously, hands on their weapons, and checked inside. Nothing appeared disturbed or missing, they told me, but there was something on my bed, another wooden figure, larger than the previous ones. This one had a crude face carved into it, and what looked like red paint splashed across it. When I described the green truck I'd seen in town, they exchanged glances. "That matches the description of a vehicle reported stolen from Port Angeles 2 days ago," one officer said. "We'll need you to come to the station to make a formal statement." As we walked toward their patrol car, a loud bang came from the direction of my van. We all turned to see smoke pouring from under the hood. "Get back," one officer shouted, pulling me away as flames suddenly erupted from the engine compartment. We watched in horror as the fire spread rapidly, engulfing my home on wheels in minutes despite the firefighters who soon arrived. The intensity of the blaze suggested an accelerant had been used. This was no accident. As I stood there, watching everything I owned burn, one of the officers approached with something in his hand. "This was on the ground near your van," he said grimly. It was a piece of paper, partially burned but still readable. "The forest remembers." In the aftermath, as I sat in the police station giving my statement, the full picture became clearer. The Guardians weren't just defending territory, they were on some kind of crusade. The detective handling my case explained that they'd been tracking the group for months, connecting them to several incidents across western Washington. They target anyone they see as a threat to the forest, he said. Loggers, surveyors, even campers who they think aren't respecting the land. Derek arrived just as I was finishing my statement, having driven over from eastern Washington after my call. I should have warned you more clearly, he said, the guilt evident in his voice. After it happened to me last year, I did some digging. The Remingtons lost their logging business when the new environmental regulations came in. Instead of adapting, they went the other way, decided if they couldn't use the forest, no one could. I thought back to that first night in the clearing, trying to understand what I'd done to attract their attention. Had I left trash behind? Damaged some plants? Or was it simply that I'd entered what they considered their domain? Whatever the reason, they'd followed me across half the state, destroyed everything I owned, and left me with nothing but the clothes on my back and the phone in my pocket. The worst part, Derek said as we left the station, is that they're still out there. The police have suspects, but no solid evidence. Those wooden figures? They leave them for everyone. They're symbols from some old logger superstition, supposed to represent forest spirits that punish those who don't respect the land. He paused, looking at me with genuine concern. Where will you go now? I had no answer. My van was gone, along with everything I'd accumulated during my years on the road. Insurance would eventually pay out, but that would take time. For now, I was stranded in a strange town, jumping at shadows and expecting to see those wooden figures everywhere I looked. The Guardians had won. They'd driven me away from the forest they claimed to protect. But as I stood there, watching the last light fade from the sky, I wondered if they'd really protected anything at all, or if they'd just become the very threat they claimed to be fighting against. My name is Lucia Vega, 29 years old, from Tacoma. I've spent the last 18 months living in my converted Ford Transit, documenting my journeys for my modest but growing travel blog. After covering most of California and Oregon, I decided it was time to explore my home state of Washington more thoroughly, particularly the areas around Mount Rainier that I'd somehow never properly experienced despite growing up just an hour away. The late spring weather had been unusually warm and clear, perfect for capturing the wildflowers that were beginning to bloom in the subalpine meadows. I'd spent the day photographing and hiking some of the more popular trails, but by late afternoon, the crowds of day trippers were starting to wear on me. The whole point of van life for me was finding those moments of solitude and connection with nature that seemed impossible in the city. So when I spotted a narrow Forest Service road branching off from the main route, I made an impulsive decision to follow it. The road wound through dense forest, gradually climbing higher as the massive silhouette of Rainier loomed ever larger through breaks in the trees. After about 20 minutes of careful driving, the road widened into a small clearing that took my breath away. A perfect viewpoint overlooking a valley with the mountain framed perfectly behind it. Even better, there were no signs prohibiting overnight parking. I'd struck gold, finding exactly the kind of spot that made this nomadic lifestyle worthwhile. As the sun began to set, the mountain's snow-capped peak turned a brilliant orange pink, and I spent a good hour just taking photos and soaking in the view. The only sounds were the gentle rustling of wind through the pines and the occasional call of birds settling in for the night. I heated up some leftover curry on my portable stove and ate at my small folding table outside the van, feeling incredibly grateful for this moment of perfect peace. This was exactly what I'd been chasing when I left my marketing job and sank my savings into converting this van. The temperature dropped quickly after sunset, driving me back inside my cozy mobile home. I switched on my small propane heater, uploaded some photos to my laptop, and started drafting a blog post about the day's explorations. I purposely left out the exact location of this perfect spot. Some places deserve to remain somewhat secret, protected from becoming overrun with visitors. Around midnight, I finally turned off my laptop and settled into my bed, drifting off to sleep with the moonlight filtering through my skylight. A sharp cracking sound jolted me awake sometime in the early hours. I sat up, momentarily disoriented, straining my ears in the darkness. Nothing but silence followed. Probably just a branch breaking under its own weight, I reasoned, or perhaps a nocturnal animal moving through the underbrush. Still, something about the sound had seemed deliberate, not natural. I reached for my phone to check the time, 3:17 a.m., and noticed I had no service this far out. Not unusual, but suddenly unsettling in the pitch-black forest. I was about to lie back down when another sound came, a soft scraping against the side of the van, like something being dragged along the metal exterior. My heart rate instantly doubled. This was definitely not a natural forest sound. I reached for my headlamp and the canister of bear spray I kept by my bed, hands trembling slightly as I strained to hear any further movement outside. For several long minutes, there was nothing, and I started to wonder if my imagination was getting the better of me. Then came the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling my van. Not the random movements of an animal, but the purposeful strides of a human. I froze, clutching the bear spray tightly, as the footsteps completed a full circuit of my vehicle and then stopped right outside my side door. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the footsteps. The sense of someone standing there, waiting, perhaps listening for signs of movement within. The first light of dawn was still hours away, and the moonlight that had been comforting earlier now cast eerie shadows across my tiny living space. I contemplated my options, honking the horn to scare off whoever was out there, starting the engine and driving away, or simply waiting it out, hoping they would leave. As I debated, my window curtain moved ever so slightly, as if someone had brushed against it from the outside. A whispered voice, barely audible, came through the thin barrier of my van. "We know you're in there." My blood turned to ice at those 4 words. I remained frozen, hardly daring to breathe, as the voice came again, slightly louder this time. "We just want to talk." Yeah, right. People who just want to talk don't creep around your van at 3 in the morning. I reached slowly for my keys, thinking that if I could get to the driver's seat quickly enough, I might be able to start the engine and get out of there before whoever it was could react. The voice continued, oddly calm and reasonable. "This is private property. You're trespassing." This gave me pause. The road hadn't been marked as private, and there'd been no gate, no signs warning against entry. I was certain I was on Forest Service land. Still, confronting a stranger in the dark wasn't high on my list of smart moves. "I'll leave at first light," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't see any signs. I thought this was public land. There was a pause, then a different voice responded, deeper, rougher. "Signs get taken down. Boundaries get crossed. People forget to respect what isn't theirs." The handle of my side door rattled slightly, testing if it was locked. Thank God it was. "You need to leave now, not at first light." The calm in his voice had an undercurrent of something dangerous, something that sent a fresh wave of adrenaline coursing through me. My instincts were screaming at me to get out of there. I scrambled to the driver's seat, fumbling with my keys in the darkness. As I slid into the seat, a beam of light suddenly flashed through my windshield. Someone was pointing a flashlight directly at me from outside. I could make out the silhouettes of 2 men standing in front of my van, blocking the narrow road. One held the flashlight, the other something longer, possibly a walking stick, or, my stomach dropped, perhaps a rifle. "Start the engine and you'll regret it," said the deeper voice, confirming my worst fears. I had no way of knowing if he was actually armed, but I wasn't about to test the theory. Maybe I could talk my way out of this. "Look," I said, trying to sound reasonable despite my racing heart. "I'm a travel blogger. I just wanted some photos of the mountain. I'll delete anything I took of this area. Just let me turn around, and I'll go back down to the main road." The flashlight lowered slightly, and the men conferred in hushed tones I couldn't make out. I used the moment to assess my surroundings. The clearing was too small for me to maneuver around them without risking going off the edge of what I now realized was a fairly steep drop-off. I was effectively cornered unless they moved. My phone was still showing no service, so calling for help wasn't an option. The bear spray was back by my bed, too far to reach without being obvious. "Step out of the vehicle," the first voice commanded. "We need to check what you've been photographing." There was absolutely no way I was getting out of my van in the middle of nowhere with 2 strange men. "I can show you the photos through the window," I offered, reaching slowly for my camera on the passenger seat. As I picked it up, my fingers brushed against something else, the emergency satellite communicator I'd invested in last year, but hardly ever used. It had an SOS button that would send my location to emergency services. I palmed it discreetly. The men approached the driver's side window, and I powered it down just a crack, enough to show them the camera screen, but not enough for them to reach in. I turned the camera on and began scrolling through the day's photos, sweeping landscapes, close-ups of wildflowers, the sunset over Rainier. See? Just nature shots. Nothing sensitive. The man with the flashlight leaned closer, studying the images with surprising intensity. Go back, he said suddenly. That one with the ridge. I scrolled back to a wide shot of the valley below, with a distinctive ridgeline visible in the foreground. The man stared at it for a long moment, then turned to his companion. She's been photographing the site, he said, his tone hardening. The second man stepped forward, and in the reflected glow of the flashlight, I caught sight of something that made my heart sink. A patch on his jacket with some kind of logo and the words Rainier Security Services. Those photos need to be deleted, the first man said, turning back to me. All of them. Now. His tone left no room for argument. What site? I asked, genuinely confused. This is just a landscape shot. The second man gave a harsh laugh. Playing dumb won't help you. We've had journalists and environmentalists sneaking around here for weeks. We know who sent you. This was spiraling out of control. They clearly thought I was someone I wasn't, possibly someone documenting something illegal or controversial. Nobody sent me. I insisted, struggling to keep my voice calm. I'm just a travel blogger. Look, I'll delete the photos if it's that important. I started deleting images from my camera, figuring I had them backed up on my laptop anyway. As I did this, I surreptitiously pressed the SOS button on the satellite communicator hidden in my lap. Now I just needed to stall until help could arrive, if it would arrive at all this far out. The men watched intently as I deleted the photos, but their suspicion didn't seem to lessen. The memory card too, the second man demanded. And your phone. This was getting worse by the minute. They clearly weren't going to be satisfied until they'd stripped me of all my devices and any evidence of whatever they thought I'd seen. I needed a distraction, something to change the dynamic of this increasingly dangerous situation. That's when I remembered the air horn I kept in the center console for bear encounters. In one quick motion, I grabbed it, aimed it out the crack in the window, and pressed the button. The deafening blast in the quiet forest had exactly the effect I'd hoped for. Both men recoiled, the flashlight dropping to the ground. I used their moment of disorientation to power up my window, lock the doors, and start the engine. The headlights illuminated their surprised faces as I threw the van into reverse, prepared to back down the narrow road if necessary. The engine roared to life, headlights cutting through the darkness to reveal the men shielding their eyes from the sudden brightness. I threw the van into reverse, ready to navigate the tricky backward descent if it meant escaping whatever trouble I'd unwittingly stumbled into. But before I could release the brake, the second man recovered from the air horn assault and moved with alarming speed. He darted to the side of the van, out of my direct line of sight, and a moment later, I heard the distinctive hiss of air. He was slashing my tires. Panic surged through me as I realized my escape plan was rapidly disintegrating. I had to make a decision, try to drive on punctured tires or barricade myself in the van and wait for the emergency response to my SOS signal. The decision was made for me when the first man reappeared in front of the van, now clearly holding a hunting rifle pointed directly at my windshield. "Turn off the engine," he shouted, all pretense of calm negotiation gone. Last warning. With no viable escape route, I cut the engine, my mind racing for a new plan. The satellite communicator in my hand had a small LED that was now blinking green. The SOS had been sent successfully. Help would be coming, but how long would it take? And what would these men do in the meantime? I needed to keep them talking, keep the situation from escalating further until authorities could arrive. "Listen," I called out, trying to project confidence despite my trembling hands. "I don't know what's going on here, but you're making a huge mistake. I activated an emergency beacon when you first approached my van. Rangers or police will be here soon. Whatever you're trying to hide, threatening me isn't going to help." It was a gamble, revealing that I'd called for help, but I hoped it might make them reconsider their actions. The men exchanged glances, a moment of uncertainty passing between them. The one with the rifle lowered it slightly, not pointing it directly at me anymore, but still holding it ready. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into," he said, his voice tight with anger or perhaps fear. This isn't about some photos. This is about national security. The claim was so unexpected and absurd that I almost laughed despite the gravity of the situation. What could possibly be happening on a remote Forest Service road that constituted a national security issue? Before I could respond, headlights appeared on the road behind us, sweeping through the trees as a vehicle approached the clearing. Relief flooded through me. Help had arrived far sooner than I expected. But the expressions on the men's faces didn't suggest they were worried about being caught. If anything, they looked satisfied, expectant. As the vehicle pulled into the clearing, I realized with a sinking feeling that it wasn't a ranger's truck or police car. It was a large black SUV with tinted windows and no visible markings. The SUV stopped and two more men emerged, these dressed in more professional-looking attire, dark suits despite the hour and the remote location. One approached my van, while the other conferred with my original confronters. The suited man tapped on my window, showing me what looked like a government ID too quickly for me to verify its authenticity. "Ms. Vega," he said, somehow knowing my name, "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle now. We have some questions about your activities in this restricted area." My blood ran cold. How did he know my name? I hadn't shown any identification to the first two men. And what restricted area? There had been no signs, no barriers. Something was very wrong here. "I'm not getting out," I replied, my voice stronger than I felt. "Not until I see legitimate law enforcement. I've already activated an emergency beacon, so whoever you are, you should know that help is on the way." The suited man's expression didn't change, but his tone hardened. "That beacon won't be reaching anyone, Ms. Vega. We're operating within a signal jamming perimeter. Now, we can do this the easy way or the difficult way, but one way or another, you will be coming with us for questioning." To emphasize his point, he produced what looked like an official document, a temporary detention order with my name on it. Either they had prepared for me specifically, or they had the ability to generate such documents on the spot. Neither option was comforting. A cold realization was settling over me. These weren't random threatening locals or overzealous security guards. This had the feel of something much more organized, much more official, despite the irregular approach. What had I photographed? I mentally reviewed the images I'd taken that day, trying to identify anything that could possibly be considered sensitive. The ridgeline they'd focused on had seemed completely ordinary to me, just another beautiful Washington landscape. The suited man was joined by his colleague, both now standing outside my driver's side door. "This area has been temporarily designated as restricted under national security protocols," the second man explained, his tone clipped and professional. "You've inadvertently photographed a sensitive installation. Those images cannot be allowed to circulate." Installation? There had been nothing on that ridge but trees and rock formations, at least nothing visible to the naked eye. A third vehicle pulled into the now crowded clearing, this one a plain white van with no windows in the back. The situation was escalating in a way that sent fear spiraling through me. Whatever was happening here, I did not want to get into that van. My options were dwindling by the second. My tires were flat, my SOS apparently blocked, and I was outnumbered by men who seemed to have some kind of official authority, real or fabricated. In a desperate move, I reached for my phone to try making a regular call, though I knew there was no service. One of the suited men noticed the movement, and suddenly the atmosphere shifted. "She's not complying," he said into a radio I hadn't noticed before. "Prepare for extraction." The words sent a chill down my spine. Extraction. Like I was some kind of foreign agent or threat. This couldn't be happening. Not in a national forest in Washington. Not to a travel blogger whose biggest controversy had been advocating for leave no trace principles. The next moments happened with terrifying speed. Something struck my van's side window, not hard enough to shatter the glass, but with a precise impact that formed a perfect spiderweb pattern. In the same instant, a canister was tossed underneath the van, and a thick white smoke began filling the cabin through the ventilation system. My eyes burned instantly, my throat constricting as I gasped for clean air. Tear gas, or something like it. As consciousness began to fade, my last clear thought was a desperate realization. No one knew exactly where I was, and these people, whoever they were, could make me disappear without a trace. I regained consciousness gradually, my head pounding and my throat raw from the gas. The first thing I noticed was the motion. I was in a moving vehicle. The second was that my hands were restrained, zip-tied to a metal ring bolted to the floor. I was in the back of what I assumed was the white van, lying on a metal bench bolted to the wall. There were no windows, just a single dim light overhead and a solid partition separating me from the cab. Fear surged through me as the reality of my situation became clear. I had been abducted. By whom and for what purpose remained unclear, but the level of coordination suggested something far beyond overzealous private security. I tried to focus, to think rationally despite the lingering effects of whatever gas they'd used. How long had I been unconscious? Where were they taking me? And most importantly, how could I escape? The van hit a rough patch of road, jostling me painfully against the metal bench. We were still on unpaved roads, which meant we likely hadn't left the forest yet. That was something, at least. We couldn't be too far from where I'd been taken. I tried to listen for any sounds that might help me identify our location or destination, but the van was surprisingly well insulated, the engine noise muffled. I tested my restraints carefully, trying not to make noise. The zip ties were industrial grade, cutting into my wrists when I pulled against them. The metal ring they were looped through seemed solid, part of the van's structure. My ankles weren't bound, though, which seemed like an oversight, until I tried to stand and discovered the effects of the gas hadn't fully worn off. My legs buckled immediately, sending me back onto the bench. Time passed with excruciating slowness. I had no watch, and my phone was gone, along with my camera, laptop, and satellite communicator. Everything that could identify me or my location had been taken. The van continued its journey, eventually transitioning from rough forest roads to smoother pavement. We were heading somewhere more established, then, a facility of some kind. A different trailhead where they could stage my disappearance as a hiking accident. After what felt like hours, but was probably less than one, the van slowed and then stopped. I heard doors opening and closing, footsteps approaching the back. I quickly decided my best option was to feign unconsciousness. Maybe I could learn something from their conversation if they thought I couldn't hear. The rear doors opened, letting in a blast of cool night air. "Still out?" a voice asked, one of the suited men from before. The dosage was calculated for someone twice her size. Another voice replied, sounding annoyed. "Bring the wheelchair. No sense carrying her." I kept my breathing slow and regular as they undid my restraints and roughly transferred me to what felt like a wheelchair. The cool air helped clear my head further, and I risked cracking my eyelids slightly as they wheeled me forward. We were in some kind of loading bay attached to a nondescript concrete building. No windows, no signage, just a series of identical metal doors. They pushed me through one of these doors into a harshly lit corridor. Despite my effort to appear unconscious, the brightness made me flinch. "She's waking up," the first man noted. There was no point in pretending anymore. I opened my eyes fully, blinking against the fluorescent lights. We were in a sterile-looking hallway that could have belonged to any government facility, or any movie set designed to look like one. "Where am I?" I demanded, my voice hoarse from the gas. "What is this place?" Neither man answered as they wheeled me into a small room furnished only with a metal table and 2 chairs. It looked exactly like an interrogation room from a police procedural, down to the mirrored glass on one wall that undoubtedly concealed an observation area. They transferred me from the wheelchair to one of the chairs, securing my still zip-tied hands to a ring on the table. Then they left without a word, the door locking automatically behind them. Alone in the room, I took stock of my situation. The effects of the gas were wearing off, leaving me clear-headed enough to recognize the gravity of what was happening. I had been abducted, transported to an unknown facility, and was now being held against my will. All apparently because I'd taken photos of a ridgeline that supposedly contained something sensitive. It was absurd, terrifying, and entirely outside my understanding of how law enforcement was supposed to work in the United States. After what seemed like an eternity, the door opened again. A woman entered, middle-aged, sharply dressed in a gray suit, with the confident bearing of someone in authority. She carried a tablet and a manila folder, which she placed on the table before sitting across from me. "Ms. Vega," she began, her tone businesslike but not unfriendly. "I apologize for the manner in which you were brought here. There are protocols that were followed perhaps overzealously by the field team." "Overzealously?" I repeated, incredulous. I was threatened at gunpoint, my tires were slashed, I was gassed and kidnapped, all for taking landscape photos in a national forest. There's no protocol that justifies that. My voice was shaking with a mixture of fear and anger. The woman regarded me impassively, then opened the folder and slid a photograph across the table. It was one of the images from my camera, the ridgeline shot they'd been so concerned about. "What do you see in this image, Ms. Vega?" she asked. I stared at the familiar landscape, the sweep of the valley, the distinctive ridgeline, the dense forest covering most of the visible terrain. "A beautiful view," I answered truthfully. "Trees, rocks, the mountain in the background. Nature." The woman nodded, then tapped something on her tablet. The photo on the table was suddenly overlaid with a digital enhancement, areas highlighted, certain features circled and annotated. "And now," she prompted. I leaned forward, studying the modified image. What had looked like random patterns of light and shadow in the forest now revealed what could be structures, geometric shapes too regular to be natural, partially concealed by the trees. And on the ridgeline itself, what I had taken to be rock formations now appeared to be some kind of installation, expertly camouflaged to blend with the surrounding environment. My confusion must have been evident. "What you stumbled upon, Ms. Vega, is a classified research facility," the woman explained. "Its existence is not public knowledge, nor is its purpose. Your camera, with its high-resolution capabilities, captured details that the naked eye would miss. Details that represent a significant security breach if made public." She paused, studying my reaction. "The question now is what you intended to do with these images." "Nothing," I exclaimed, frustration mounting. "I told your people, I'm a travel blogger. I take pretty pictures of landscapes for my website. I had no idea there was anything on that ridge besides trees and rocks." The woman's expression remained neutral as she consulted her tablet again. "Your website," she said, scrolling through what I assumed were my blog posts. LuciaOnTheRoad.com, 15,000 followers. Not insignificant reach. She set the tablet down and leaned forward. "Here's our situation, Ms. Vega. You've inadvertently captured sensitive information. We need to ensure that information doesn't spread, and we need to understand if your presence in that precise location was truly coincidental." The implication was clear. They suspected I might be something other than a simple travel blogger. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh, despite the circumstances. "Check my background," I urged. "Check my blog, my social media, my entire online presence. I have no connection to whatever research you're doing. I was literally just looking for a pretty spot to photograph the sunset." The woman nodded as if she'd expected this response. "We are checking, Ms. Vega, quite thoroughly. In the meantime, you'll remain our guest until we're satisfied that this was indeed just an unfortunate coincidence." Guest. The euphemism was almost worse than prisoner. "And if you decide it was a coincidence, what then?" I asked, dreading the answer. The woman closed the folder and stood up. "Then we'll discuss the terms of your release, which will include non-disclosure agreements regarding everything you've seen, including this facility. But let's not get ahead of ourselves." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Try to rest, Ms. Vega. This process may take some time." As the door closed behind her, leaving me alone again, the full weight of my situation descended like a physical pressure. I was completely at their mercy, with no one knowing where I was or what had happened to me. My emergency beacon had been blocked or disabled. My van, my home, was abandoned in a remote clearing with slashed tires. Even if I was eventually released, how would I explain my disappearance? Would anyone believe what had happened? The lights in the room dimmed slightly, presumably their signal that it was time for me to rest, as suggested. But sleep was impossible as my mind raced with scenarios, each more disturbing than the last. What if they decided I was a threat regardless of the evidence? What if I simply disappeared, becoming another mysterious vanishing in the vast wilderness of the national forest? The thought sent a cold wave of terror through me, more frightening than any horror story I'd ever heard around a campfire. I don't know when I finally fell asleep, exhaustion overcoming fear, but I woke to the harsh fluorescent lights returning to full brightness. My mouth was dry, my wrists raw from the zip ties. The door opened and a different man entered, younger than the previous interrogators, carrying a tray with what appeared to be breakfast and a bottle of water. He placed the tray on the table, then surprised me by cutting the zip ties. "You've been cleared to eat," he said, his tone neutral. "Try not to make me regret removing the restraints." The small kindness of being able to move my arms freely almost brought tears to my eyes. I rubbed my wrists, wincing at the red welts where the plastic had dug into my skin. The food looked institutional but edible: scrambled eggs, toast, a small container of orange juice. My stomach growled despite my situation, reminding me that bodily needs continue even in crisis. "How long have I been here?" I asked, reaching for the water bottle. "That's not relevant to your situation," the man replied automatically, moving to stand by the door. A rehearsed response. He'd been instructed on what information to withhold. I tried another approach. "Can you at least tell me what happens next? When will I get to speak to a lawyer?" He shifted uncomfortably. "You're not under arrest, Ms. Vega. You're being detained under national security protocols. Different rules apply." Different rules. The implications were chilling. If I wasn't under arrest, then I had none of the protections that would normally apply to someone in police custody. No phone call, no lawyer, no habeas corpus. I ate mechanically, trying to think. If they were feeding me, allowing me to rest, then they planned to keep me alive. That was something, at least. And the fact that the woman had mentioned release terms suggested they weren't planning to make me disappear permanently. After I finished eating, the young man collected the tray and left without another word. The waiting resumed. Hours of nothing but my thoughts and the steady hum of the ventilation system. I tried to keep track of time by counting, but without any external reference points, it was easy to lose track. The monotony was occasionally broken by bathroom breaks, always escorted by a stone-faced guard who never responded to my questions. My third meal in captivity, what I assumed was dinner based on it being pasta with some kind of meat sauce, was delivered by the woman from the first interrogation. This time, she sat down across from me as I ate. "We've completed our initial investigation," she announced without preamble. "Your background checks out. Your website is exactly what it appears to be. Your presence in the restricted zone appears to have been genuinely coincidental." Relief flooded through me. "So I can go now?" I asked, trying not to sound too eager. The woman's expression didn't change. "Not quite yet. There are still procedures to follow. Paperwork to complete. Agreements to sign." She slid a thick document across the table. "This is a non-disclosure agreement. It legally prohibits you from discussing anything related to what you've seen or experienced. The facility on the ridge, this building, the personnel you've encountered, even the fact that you were detained." I stared at the document, its dense legal language swimming before my eyes. And if I refused to sign? The question was rhetorical. I already knew the answer. The woman confirmed it. "That's not an option we're offering, Ms. Vega." She produced a pen and placed it on top of the papers. "I should also inform you that all your electronic devices have been thoroughly examined and any images of the restricted area have been removed. Your vehicle has been relocated to a trailhead parking area with 4 new tires, a courtesy for the inconvenience." The casualness with which she mentioned the invasion of my privacy and the tampering with my possessions was infuriating, but I swallowed my anger. Getting out of here was the priority. I could deal with everything else later. I signed the documents where indicated, my signature shaky from stress and fatigue. The woman collected the papers with a satisfied nod. "You'll be escorted back to your vehicle shortly. A cover story has been prepared for your absence. You were found disoriented after becoming lost while hiking. Medical assistance was provided, and you're now being returned to your vehicle." The fabricated story was the final insult. Not only were they erasing what they'd done, but they were replacing it with a narrative that made me look incompetent. Still, I said nothing as she stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. "One last thing, Ms. Vega. Your activities will be monitored for compliance with the agreement you just signed. Any violation, any hint that you're attempting to share what happened here, will result in immediate consequences. I trust that won't be necessary." The threat hung in the air as she left. Less than an hour later, I was blindfolded and led back to a vehicle, possibly the same white van, though I couldn't be sure. The drive seemed shorter this time, or perhaps I was simply more aware during it. When we finally stopped and the blindfold was removed, I found myself in a public trailhead parking lot. My van was there, looking untouched except for the brand new tires. My keys were handed to me by one of the suited men who had first confronted me in the clearing. "Remember the agreement," he said quietly before returning to the unmarked SUV that had transported me. I watched them drive away, half expecting them to double back or for another vehicle to remain to watch me. But the parking lot was empty except for a few cars belonging to hikers still on the trails. It was early evening, the sun beginning to lower toward the horizon. How many days had passed? Without my phone, I had no way to check the date. Inside my van, everything looked undisturbed at first glance. But as I examined more closely, I noticed the subtle signs of intrusion. Items not quite where I'd left them, my clothes rearranged slightly in their storage containers. My electronics had been returned, phone, camera, laptop, but as the woman had said, the photos of the ridgeline were gone. Not just deleted, but completely wiped, as if they'd never existed. My phone showed the date. Only 2 days had passed since my abduction, though it felt like weeks. I sat in the driver's seat, keys in hand, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. Relief at my release, anger at the violation, fear of the monitoring they'd threatened. What did that mean? Had they planted something in my van? Were they tracking my phone? Would they follow me wherever I went now? The sense of freedom and independence that had drawn me to van life in the first place seemed suddenly fragile, an illusion easily shattered. Starting the engine, I pulled out of the parking lot and onto the main park road, heading for the exit. As I passed through the forest that had seemed so magical just days ago, I couldn't help scanning each ridgeline, each shadow among the trees, wondering what else might be hidden there, what other secrets were being kept under the guise of national security. The mountain loomed in my rearview mirror, no longer simply a natural monument, but a reminder of how quickly everything I valued, my freedom, my privacy, my sense of safety, could be taken away. At the park exit, I made an impulsive decision, turning north instead of south. Not toward home, not toward friends or family who might ask questions I was now legally forbidden to answer. Just away from the mountain, from whatever I'd unknowingly photographed, from the people who had made it clear they could find me whenever they wanted. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white as a realization settled over me. I would never feel truly alone in the wilderness again. The open road stretched before me as darkness fell, the headlights illuminating only a short distance ahead. In my side mirror, I could see nothing but darkness behind me, but the sensation of being watched, of being followed, clung to me like a physical presence. Somewhere in the night, I was certain, they were tracking my movement, ensuring I kept my silence. The freedom of van life had always come with risks, weather, mechanical issues, the occasional uncomfortable encounter with strangers. But this was different. This was knowing that my solitude was an illusion, that eyes I couldn't see were always watching. I drove through the night, putting as much distance as possible between myself and Mount Rainier. By dawn, I had crossed the state line into Idaho, the mountain long since disappeared from my mirrors. But as I pulled into a rest stop to finally sleep, exhaustion overcoming caution, I couldn't shake one final, disturbing thought. How many other travelers had strayed into places they shouldn't have? How many other vans had been stopped in the night, their owners questioned or disappeared? How many other secrets were hidden in the landscapes we thought we knew? And how many other travelers had vanished without a trace, their stories erased as completely as the photos on my camera? I parked in the furthest corner of the rest stop, away from the few semi-trucks whose drivers were catching sleep before continuing their journeys. Exhaustion pulled at me, but rest wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the suited figures, felt the burning of the gas in my lungs, heard the woman's cold voice explaining how easily they could make me disappear. After tossing restlessly for an hour, I gave up on sleep and started planning instead. I needed to re-establish some sense of control, some illusion of security, even if it was just that, an illusion. First, I meticulously inspected my van, searching for anything that might have been planted during my detention. I checked every compartment, removed panels where I could, examined the undercarriage with a flashlight. I found nothing obvious, but that didn't mean there was nothing to find. My phone and laptop were more concerning. I had neither the tools nor the knowledge to detect sophisticated surveillance software. For all I knew, every word I typed, every call I made, every location I visited was being monitored. The thought made my skin crawl. I considered abandoning the devices altogether, buying burners with cash, but that would only raise flags. They'd expect me to use my existing electronics if I truly had nothing to hide. As the sun climbed higher, I finally drifted into a fitful sleep, waking with a start every time a vehicle pulled into the rest stop. By mid-afternoon, I couldn't stay there any longer. I needed to move, to feel like I was doing something other than waiting for them to find me again. I pulled back onto the highway, heading deeper into Idaho with no real destination in mind. The following weeks passed in a haze of constant movement. I abandoned my usual habits. No more posting my location on my blog. No more lingering in beautiful remote spots. No more easy conversations with fellow travelers. I stuck to populous areas, public campgrounds, places where disappearing someone would be complicated. I kept my camera packed away most of the time, the joy of photography now tainted by suspicion. What might I accidentally capture next? What ordinary landscape might conceal something I wasn't supposed to see? My blog suffered from my new paranoia. My posts became generic, lacking the specific locations and detailed descriptions that had once been my trademark. My followers noticed, comments questioning the change in style, asking why I wasn't sharing my usual beautiful remote camping spots. I crafted vague explanations about wanting to protect sensitive areas from overuse, about taking time to focus on the journey rather than the documentation. Some accepted this. Others drifted away, finding other van life influencers who still provided the vicarious wilderness experience they craved. 1 month after my experience at Mount Rainier, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize, containing nothing but a photo, one of my own, taken the day before my detention. It showed me sitting outside my van in the clearing, the mountain in the background, clearly unaware I was being photographed. The message required no words. Its meaning was clear: we're still watching. Remember your agreement. The photo sent me into a spiral of panic, prompting another frantic search of my van, another relocation to a different state. I found myself in eastern Oregon, parked at a busy RV park outside Bend, the kind of commercial, crowded place I would have avoided before. That night, sitting in my van with the doors locked despite the safety of the busy surroundings, I finally acknowledged the truth I'd been avoiding. I couldn't do this anymore. The constant fear, the looking over my shoulder, the suspicion of every unmarked vehicle. It was destroying everything I loved about my chosen lifestyle. The next morning, I called my sister in Sacramento, the first time I'd reached out to family since the incident. "I need a place to stay for a while," I said when she answered, my voice breaking slightly. "I'm thinking of selling the van." Her surprise was evident. The van had been my pride and joy, my home, my freedom. But she didn't ask questions, just told me to come as soon as I could. Family had always been like that, there when needed, no explanation required. The drive to Sacramento took 2 days, each mile simultaneously bringing relief and grief. I was leaving behind the life I'd built, the independence I'd cherished. But with each state line I crossed, each hour that passed without a black SUV appearing in my mirrors, I felt some of the tightness in my chest ease. By the time I reached my sister's suburban home, with its neat lawn and solid walls, I was exhausted but calmer than I'd been in weeks. "You look like hell," was her greeting as she hugged me tightly. I laughed for what felt like the first time in months. "Thanks for the warm welcome." She helped me unload the essential belongings I'd need while staying with her, eyeing the van with concern. "Are you really selling it? What happened out there?" The question was gentle but direct. My sister had always been able to sense when something was wrong. I opened my mouth, ready to tell her everything. Consequences be damned. But the words wouldn't come. The memory of the woman's threat, immediate consequences, echoed in my mind. I wasn't just risking myself. I'd be putting my sister at risk too. So I gave her the edited version, the safe version. I had a scare in Washington, got lost, had to be rescued. It made me realize how vulnerable I am out there alone. I think I need a break. Maybe look for a job with actual walls and coworkers. She accepted this with minimal probing, though I could tell she sensed there was more to the story. The next few days were spent reacclimating to stationary life, sleeping in the same bed each night, showering without worrying about water conservation, cooking in a full kitchen. It should have felt luxurious after years in the van, but instead, it felt confining. The solid walls that had seemed so reassuring at first began to feel like a prison of a different kind. 2 weeks into my stay, I was scrolling through news on my laptop when a headline caught my eye. "Hiker found dead in Mount Rainier National Park." The article described how a solo backpacker had been discovered off-trail in a remote area west of the main visitor centers. Cause of death was still under investigation. What grabbed my attention was the location, It was unsettlingly close to where I'd been detained. And the timing, just days after I'd left Washington. With a growing sense of dread, I searched for more information, finding the hiker's name in another article. Derek Schaefer, 34, from Portland. An experienced outdoorsman who'd reportedly gone missing after telling friends he was planning to explore some lesser-known areas of the park. The official statement suggested he might have fallen or suffered a medical emergency, but details were sparse. I felt sick as I stared at the grainy photo accompanying the article. A bearded man with a friendly smile, standing on some unnamed mountain summit. Had Derek Schaefer stumbled across the same hidden facility? Had he, like me, taken photos of something he wasn't supposed to see? But unlike me, had he perhaps not been as cooperative, not signed their documents, become a loose end they needed to eliminate? It could be coincidence. It probably was coincidence. People did occasionally die in national parks, exposure, falls, wildlife encounters. But the location, the timing, it was enough to send me spiraling back into paranoia. That night, I dreamed of being back in the white van, but this time I wasn't alone. Derek Schaefer was there too, trying to tell me something I couldn't hear over the engine noise, his face growing increasingly desperate as he realized I couldn't understand. I woke in a cold sweat, reaching instinctively for my phone to check the time. Instead of the lock screen, I found it open to my Photos app, displaying pictures I hadn't taken, images of my sister's house from different angles, her car in the driveway, her leaving for work that morning. The final photo showed me sleeping, taken through the bedroom window just hours earlier. My hands shook so violently I dropped the phone. This wasn't just monitoring anymore. This was intimidation, a reminder that they could reach me anywhere, that no one I cared about was beyond their reach. The message was clear: don't get comfortable. Don't forget what you agreed to. Don't start thinking you're free. I deleted the photos immediately, though I knew it wouldn't matter. They'd made their point. I spent the rest of the night sitting by the window, watching the quiet suburban street for any sign of surveillance, any unfamiliar vehicle or figure in the shadows. Nothing appeared, but that was almost worse. They didn't need to be visible to be watching. By morning, I'd made my decision. I couldn't stay here, couldn't risk bringing whatever this was to my sister's doorstep. I put my van up for sale that day, accepting the first reasonable offer that came in. With the money, I bought a used sedan, anonymous, forgettable, the kind of car that blends into any parking lot. I packed light, taking only what would fit in the trunk. "You don't have to leave," my sister protested when I told her my plans. "Whatever's going on, we can figure it out together." The concern in her eyes made my throat tight with unshed tears. I wanted so badly to tell her everything, to share the burden that had been crushing me since that night in the clearing. But I couldn't, not just because of the NDA, but because knowing would only put her in danger. "I just need to keep moving for a while," I said instead, hugging her goodbye. "I'll call when I can." It wasn't much of an explanation, but it was all I could safely offer. As I drove away from her home, I caught a glimpse of a dark sedan pulling out several houses down, falling into traffic behind me. Maybe it was paranoia, maybe it was real. At this point, the distinction hardly mattered. I drove east this time, crossing state lines with no particular destination in mind. The sedan was different from the van, less conspicuous, but also less free. I couldn't simply pull over and sleep wherever I found myself. I needed motels, rest stops, established campgrounds with facilities for tent camping. Each night in a new location, each day on unfamiliar roads, I waited for another sign that they were watching, another reminder of what I'd signed away. It came 3 weeks later at a small motel outside Denver. I returned to my room after dinner to find the door unlocked, though I was certain I'd locked it. Inside, everything looked untouched except for my laptop, which was open on the bed, screen displaying a Word document I hadn't created. The text was simple: "We appreciate your continued cooperation. Remember that some stories are better left untold." Below this message was a link to a news article dated that day. Heart pounding, I clicked it, already suspecting what I would find. It was an update on Derek Schaefer's death, now officially ruled an accident due to a fall. Case closed. Investigation complete. No further questions. The subtext was unmistakable. This could have been you. This could still be you. That night, sitting in the anonymous motel room with its generic art and functional furniture, I finally accepted the fundamental change in my life. I would never be completely free again, I would always be looking over my shoulder, always wondering if that unmarked car was following me, that person in the restaurant watching me, that unexpected sound in the night coming for me. The carefree traveler I'd been had died in that clearing on Mount Rainier, replaced by someone hunted. But acceptance brought with it a strange sort of calm. If this was my reality now, I would learn to live with it on my own terms. I couldn't outrun them. They'd made that abundantly clear. But perhaps I could build a life that acknowledged their presence without surrendering to fear. The next morning, I checked out of the motel and pointed my car toward a small town in eastern Colorado I'd once passed through and liked. It seemed as good a place as any to try putting down roots again. 6 months later, I'm still here. I found a job at a local media company, using my photography and writing skills in ways that never take me near government land or suspicious ridgelines. I rent a small house on the edge of town with good sight lines in all directions and strong locks on every door and window. My blog still exists, but has transformed into something less specific, more philosophical. Reflections on travel and home rather than explicit directions to hidden gems in the wilderness. They still check in occasionally. An email with a photo of me going about my daily routine, a document mysteriously open on my computer, once even a wooden figure like the ones from my nightmares placed on my front step. Each time, the message is the same: we're still watching. We haven't forgotten. Neither should you. And I haven't forgotten. How could I? But I've learned to live alongside the fear rather than being consumed by it. Some days I almost convinced myself it was all a bad dream, that there was no facility on that ridgeline, no white van, no detention center. Then I'll catch a glimpse of a black SUV with tinted windows idling at the end of my street, or notice a man in a suit watching me from across the coffee shop, and reality comes rushing back. The truth is out there in the forests of Washington, hidden among the trees on an unmarked ridge. I know it exists because I saw it, even if I can never speak of it. Sometimes I wonder how many others have similar stories, experiences edited out of their lives by faceless authorities protecting secrets we aren't supposed to know exist. How many of us are living with these private hauntings, these unspeakable memories? How many vanlifers have parked in the wrong clearing? Hikers wandered down the wrong trail. Photographers captured the wrong horizon. These are questions I'll never have answers to, stories I'll never hear, confirmations I'll never receive. And so I live my half-life in this small town, going through the motions of normalcy while always aware of the invisible leash around my neck. The mountains still call to me sometimes. The open road still whispers promises of freedom. But I know now what I didn't know then, that some views aren't meant to be seen, some places aren't meant to be found, and some stories aren't meant to be told. Not even around a campfire, dark and late at night, when the only listeners are the stars above and the shadows that watch from just beyond the circle of light. The gravel crunches under my van's tires as I pull into a secluded turnout off Highway 20, deep in Washington's North Cascades. My name's Elias Whitaker, I'm 29 years old, and I live in Boise, Idaho, chasing freedom in my converted Ford Transit. The van's my sanctuary, solar panels, a tiny kitchen, a bed that smells like cedar. I've been on the road for 2 years, parking in places that make your heart race just from the view. Tonight, though, the vibe's off. The air's heavy, like it's holding its breath. I'm not alone out here. My buddy Cashin, a wiry 32-year-old photographer from Seattle, is in his own rig a few yards away. He's all about capturing the soul of the wild, as he puts it. His girlfriend, Mara, 27, is with him, quiet, sharp-eyed, always sketching in her notebook. The spot's gorgeous but eerie, tucked between jagged peaks and dense firs. No cell service, no Wi-Fi, just us in the wilderness. I chose this place from a Vanlife forum post. Some rando swore it was a hidden gem. Maybe too hidden. The sun's dipping fast, painting the sky a bruised purple. I step out, stretch, and feel a chill that's not just the mountain air. Cashin's already fiddling with his camera, muttering about light. Mara's sketching the ridgeline, her pencil scratching like a warning. I laugh it off, tell myself it's just the isolation playing tricks. Still, something's gnawing at me, something I can't name yet. I grab a beer from my cooler and offer one to Cashin, who waves it off, too focused on his lens. Mara takes it, though, giving me a half-smile that doesn't reach her eyes. We've been friends since I met them at a campsite in Oregon last year. Cashin's the dreamer, always chasing the next shot. Mara's the realist, always watching, like she's waiting for something to go wrong. I'm somewhere in between, I guess, just a guy who loves the open road but hates surprises. The van's my escape from a dead-end job in Boise, from a life that felt like a cage. The night's settling in, and I'm trying to shake this uneasy feeling. I've parked in remote spots before, Yellowstone, the Badlands, even sketchy lots in Nevada, but this place feels different. It's too quiet, like the forest's holding a grudge. I tell Cashin we should build a fire, keep things cozy. He nods, but his eyes are on the trees, not me. Mara's still sketching, her hands moving faster now. I glance at her notebook, a twisted figure, all angles and shadows, nothing like the landscape. What's that? I ask, half joking. She snaps the book shut, says it's nothing. I start gathering twigs, trying to ignore the way the darkness seems to lean in closer. The air smells like pine and something sharp, metallic. Maybe it's just my imagination, but I swear I catch a whiff of something rotten, like roadkill left too long. I brush it off, focus on stacking the wood. Cashin finally puts his camera down and helps, though he's distracted, glancing over his shoulder. You feel that? He asks, voice low. I shrug, play it cool, but my gut's telling me something's wrong. Mara's watching us now, her beer untouched. The fire crackles to life, casting flickering shadows on our vans. I've got mine decked out with blackout curtains and a rooftop tent for stargazing, though I'm not sure I'll sleep tonight. Cashin's rig is a beat-up Sprinter, covered in stickers from every national park he's hit. Mara's got her own corner in there, a nest of blankets and art supplies. We sit around the fire, the warmth doing little to ease the chill in my bones. I try to lighten the mood, cracking a joke about bears. Cashin laughs, but it's hollow. Mara doesn't even look up. I'm used to the solitude of van life, the way it strips you down to just you and your thoughts. But tonight, it's not comforting. It's oppressive, like the mountains are watching us. I think about that horror movie, The Hills Have Eyes, where people get picked off in the desert. Stupid comparison, right? This is Washington, not some wasteland. Still, my mind's racing. I glance at Cashin, who's poking the fire, his face tight. Mara's staring into the flames, her fingers twitching like she's drawing in her head. The stars are out now, sharp and cold against the black sky. I should feel free, like I always do on the road, but instead I feel trapped. Maybe it's the way the trees seem to close in, or the way the silence feels alive, like it's waiting for us to screw up. I tell myself I'm being paranoid, that I've watched too many scary movies. Cashin's quiet now, his camera forgotten. Mara's muttering something under her breath, too soft to hear. I lean closer, about to ask what she said, when a branch snaps somewhere in the dark. My heart jumps, but I force a laugh. Probably just a deer, I say, though I don't believe it. Cashin nods, but his hand's on the knife at his belt. Mara's eyes are locked on the trees, wide and unblinking. The fire's still going, but it feels like the darkness is winning. I tell myself we're fine, just three friends camping in the wild. But deep down, I know something's out there, and it's not friendly. The night's only just begun, and already it feels like we're not alone. The fire's dying down, and I'm kicking myself for not grabbing more wood earlier. The cold's creeping in, biting at my fingers as I rub them together. Cashin's pacing now, his boots scuffing the dirt, muttering about how we should have picked a spot closer to a town. Mara's still glued to her sketchbook, but she's not drawing anymore, just staring at the page like it's whispering secrets. I try to keep things light, suggesting we roast some marshmallows, but my voice sounds thin, like it's lost in the vastness of this place. The North Cascades feel alive tonight, and not in a good way. It's like the forest's waiting for us to make a mistake, and I'm starting to think we already have. I check my van's battery monitor. Crap, it's lower than I thought. Must have left the interior lights on too long. I curse under my breath and decide to run the engine for a bit to charge it up. Cashin's not thrilled. He says the noise might attract attention. From what? I snap, sharper than I meant. He just shrugs, but his eyes dart to the trees again. Mara finally speaks up, her voice low. We shouldn't stay here. I ask why, but she just shakes her head, clutching her notebook like it's a shield. I want to press her, but something in her eyes stops me. Pure, unfiltered fear. I climb into my van to start the engine, the familiar rumble calming my nerves for a second. But as I sit there, I notice something weird. My rearview mirror is tilted, showing the back of the van instead of the road. I didn't touch it. My heart does a little flip, but I tell myself it's nothing. Maybe the vibrations from driving shifted it. I adjust it back, but now I'm hyper-aware of every creak in the van. I think about that old news story from Washington, some hiker disappearing near Mount Baker. They never found him, just his gear scattered like someone, or something, wanted it that way. Cashin's outside, arguing with Mara now. I can't hear the words, but their voices are sharp, cutting through the night. I step out, trying to play peacemaker. Guys, chill, it's just a creepy night. Cashin shoots me a look, says he saw something move out there, beyond the firelight. Probably a raccoon, I say, but my stomach's twisting. Mara's not having it either. She's insisting we pack up and leave. I point out it's pitch black, and driving these winding roads now would be suicide. Plus, my battery's still charging. Bad call, I know, but I'm stubborn. We compromise. We'll stay till dawn, then bolt. I'm not thrilled, but I figure we can handle one night. I grab my flashlight and do a quick walk around the vans, checking for anything weird. The beam catches something. A scrap of fabric caught on a branch, maybe 20 feet from Cashin's rig. It's faded, torn, like it's been there a while. Could be from a hiker, but it's got this disturbing vibe, like it was left on purpose. I don't tell the others. They're freaked out enough. I shove it in my pocket and head back, my skin crawling. Back at the fire, Cashin's trying to lighten the mood, telling a story about a bear he saw in Yellowstone. But his voice shakes, and he keeps glancing at the woods. Mara's not listening. She's scribbling again, her hands frantic. I catch a glimpse of her page, jagged lines, a figure with too many limbs. Mara, what the hell? I ask. She rips the page out, tosses it in the fire. Just a nightmare, she mutters, but her eyes are wild, like she's seen something I haven't. I want to push, but another sound cuts through, a low, guttural hum, like machinery, but wrong. It's coming from the trees. I freeze, my flashlight shaking in my hand. Cashin's on his feet, knife out. What was that? He whispers. I try to play it off, say it's probably a generator from a distant campsite, but my voice cracks. There's no one else out here. No lights, no roads, nothing for miles. The hum stops, but now the silence is worse, heavy and suffocating. I think about those true crime shows, where people vanish in the wilderness, their cars found empty. My van's engine is still running, but it feels like a beacon now, announcing us to whatever's out there. Mara's the first to move, grabbing her bag and heading for Cashin's van. We're leaving, she says, no room for argument. I want to agree, but my van's battery isn't fully charged, and I'm not leaving my home behind. Cashin's torn, looking between us and the dark. 5 more minutes, I say, knowing it's a bad idea but too proud to admit it. Mara glares, but she waits, her foot tapping like a countdown. I head back to my van to check the battery, my flashlight cutting through the dark. That's when I see it, a fresh scratch on my driver's side door, long and deep, like a claw mark. My breath catches, and I swing the light around, half expecting to see some animal. Nothing, just trees and shadows that feel too alive. I tell myself it's just a branch, but my hands are shaking as I climb back into the van. The battery's at 80%, good enough. I'm about to call out to Cashin when I hear Mara scream, sharp and terrified. It's not a sound you fake. My heart's pounding as I grab my crowbar from under the seat and run toward their van, the night closing in around me. Mara's scream cuts off as fast as it started, leaving my ears ringing in the silence. I'm sprinting toward Cashin's van, crowbar gripped so tight my knuckles ache. The fire's barely aglow now, casting long, twisted shadows that mess with my head. I call out to Cashin, my voice cracking like a teenager's. No answer. My flashlight beam dances across their Sprinter, catching the open side door. Mara's bag is on the ground, spilling pencils and paper into the dirt. My stomach lurches. This is bad, real bad. I think of those horror stories, like that couple in Oregon who vanished from a campsite, their tents slashed to ribbons. This feels like that, only worse. I reach the van, my breath hitching as I peer inside. It's empty. Cashin's camera is on the floor, lens cracked. Mara's sketchbook lies open, showing that same disturbing figure. Too many limbs, no face. My heart's hammering so loud I can barely think. I swing the flashlight around, scanning the trees. Something moves, just a flicker, low to the ground, too big for a coyote. I shout their names again, my voice swallowed by the forest. The air's thick with that metallic stench now, mixed with something sour, like sweat. Whatever's out here, it's close, and it's not an animal. I back away from the van, crowbar raised, my mind racing. Did they run? Were they taken? I think about bolting to my van, but leaving them feels wrong, like abandoning family. I force myself to circle their rig, checking for clues. That's when I see it. Blood, smeared on the rear bumper, still wet. My knees nearly buckle. It's not much, but it's enough to make this horrifyingly real. I flash back to a news clip about a hiker in these mountains, found with wounds no bear could make. I shake it off, try to focus, but every rustle in the bushes feels like a threat closing in. I call out again, softer now, afraid to draw attention. The hum from earlier is back, louder, pulsing like a heartbeat. It's coming from deeper in the woods, maybe 100 yards off. I'm torn, go after it or stay put. My flashlight catches something else, a shoe, Mara's sneaker, lying in the dirt near the tree line. It's scuffed, like it was torn off in a struggle. My mouth goes dry. I'm no hero, but I can't just stand here. I take a step toward the woods, crowbar ready, when I hear Cashin's voice, faint, panicked, calling my name from the dark. I run toward the sound, branches snapping under my boots. The forest feels alive, like it's watching, waiting for me to screw up. I'm thinking about every dumb choice in horror movies, splitting up, chasing noises, and here I am, doing exactly that. Cashin's voice comes again, closer but weaker, like he's hurt. I push through a tangle of ferns, my flashlight catching glimpses of movement, something darting between trees. It's too fast, too deliberate. My gut screams to turn back, but I can't leave him. The hum's louder now, vibrating in my chest, making my teeth ache. I stumble into a clearing, and there's Cashin, slumped against a tree, clutching his arm. Blood seeping through his fingers, staining his jacket. Elias, he gasps, eyes wide with terror. They're not human. I freeze, my brain struggling to process. Who? I whisper, but he just shakes his head, pointing shakily toward the trees. I swing my light that way, and for a split second, I see it, tall, thin, moving wrong, like its joints don't work like ours. It's gone before I can focus, but the image burns into my brain, disturbing and unnatural. Where's Mara? I ask, helping him up. He's shaking, barely able to stand. They took her, he chokes out. I try to stop them, but his voice trails off, and I notice his knife's gone. My mind's spinning. They? What the hell does that mean? I think of those old Washington legends, stories of things in the woods that aren't bears or cougars. I always laugh them off, but now they feel too real. The hum stopped, replaced by a rustling, like something circling us. I pull Cashin toward the vans, my heart pounding so hard I can barely breathe. We're halfway back when I hear it, a low, guttural laugh. Not human, not animal, coming from all directions. My skin crawls, and Cashin grips my arm, his fingers digging in. We gotta go, he whispers, his voice breaking. I nod, but my van's still 100 feet away, and the darkness feels like it's closing in. I'm kicking myself for parking here, for ignoring Mara's warnings, for thinking I could outsmart the wild. The rustling's closer now, and I swear I see eyes, too many, too high off the ground, glinting in my flashlight's beam. I drag Cashin toward my van, my crowbar slick with sweat. Every step feels like a gamble, like we're being hunted. I'm thinking about that news story again, the one about the hiker's gear scattered across the forest. Was this what got him? My flashlight flickers, and for a second, I'm blind. When it comes back, something's standing at the edge of the clearing, tall, wrong, watching us. I don't wait to see more. I shove Cashin forward, my voice hoarse as I yell for him to run, the terror fully sinking in as the night turns deadly. My legs burn as I haul Cashin toward my van, his weight dragging me down. The forest is a blur of shadows, my flashlight bouncing wildly, catching glimpses of things I don't want to see, shapes moving just out of sight, too fast, too wrong. Cashin's gasping, his arm bleeding bad, soaking my jacket. I'm cursing myself for every dumb choice that led us here, for ignoring that gut feeling back when the night was still quiet. The air's thick with that metallic stench, and that guttural laugh echoes again, closer now, like it's toying with us. I think of those horror flicks where the monster lets you run just to savor the chase. This feels like that, only it's real, and I'm not sure we're making it out. I shove Cashin into the passenger seat of my van, slamming the door. My hands are shaking so bad I fumble the keys, dropping them in the dirt. "Come on," Cashin yells, his voice raw. I snatch them up, heart pounding, and scramble into the driver's seat. The engine roars to life, a small mercy, but the second I flick on the headlights, I wish I hadn't. Something's standing there, just beyond the beams, tall, spindly, with limbs that bend wrong. Its eyes, if you can call them that, glint like wet glass. I floor it, tires spinning, gravel flying, not caring if I wreck the suspension. We've got to get out. The road's a nightmare, narrow and twisting, the kind of path you don't drive at night unless you're desperate. I'm way past desperate. Cashin's clutching his arm, muttering about Mara, how we can't leave her. I want to scream that we're no good to her dead, but I bite it back. The van swerves as I take a curve too fast, branches scraping the sides like nails on a chalkboard. That disturbing laugh follows us, weaving through the trees, like whatever's out there is keeping pace. I glance in the rearview mirror. Nothing but darkness, but I know better. They're there. I'm pushing 50 on a road meant for 20, the van rattling like it's gonna fall apart. Cashin's trying to wrap his arm with a rag, but the blood's still coming. "What the hell were those things?" he chokes out. I don't answer, can't. My mind's stuck on Mara, on that shoe in the dirt, on the way that thing moved. I think of those old Washington stories, loggers talking about shadow folk in the Cascades. I laughed them off in a Boise bar once. Not laughing now. The road dips, and I nearly lose control, the van fishtailing. I grit my teeth, keep driving. A mile down, and I think maybe we're clear, but then something slams into the side of the van. The impact's brutal, rocking us hard, and I hear metal scream. Cashin yells, and I swerve, barely keeping us on the road. My flashlight's rolling on the floor, useless now. I risk a glance out the window. Nothing but trees, but I know it's not over. Another hit, this time from behind, and the back window cracks. They're on us. Cashin screams, and I see it in the side mirror. Something clinging to the roof, its shape all wrong, moving like a spider. I slam the brakes, hoping to shake it, but it holds on, and now I hear scratching, like claws on metal. My van's my home, my life, and these things are tearing it apart. I think of that news report about a missing family in these mountains. Their RV found gutted, no trace of them. My hands are slick with sweat, but I keep driving, weaving through the turns. Cashin's shouting about a ranger station we passed 10 miles back. It's our only shot. The scratching stops, but I don't trust it. The silence is worse, like they're planning something. The road opens up a bit, and I push the van harder, tires screaming. My heart's in my throat, every muscle screaming to run, to fight, to do anything but sit here. I glance at Cashin. He's pale, too pale, his eyes glassy. "Stay with me, man," I say, but my voice sounds hollow. Something moves in the trees, keeping pace, and I catch a glimpse of another figure. Taller, faster, its limbs jerking like a broken puppet. The horror of it hits me like a punch. These aren't people, aren't animals. There's something else, something that shouldn't exist. I see a sign for the ranger station, maybe 2 miles out. Hope flares, but it's short-lived. The van lurches as something heavy lands on the roof, denting it inward. I swerve, trying to throw it off, but it's relentless, clawing at the metal. Cashin's fumbling with his bag, pulling out a flare gun. "Do it," I yell, and he fires through the cracked window. The flare lights up the night, and for a second, I see them. 3, maybe 4, their shapes twisted, eyes glinting. They scatter, but not far. I floor it, praying the van holds together. The ranger station's lights flicker in the distance, a beacon in this nightmare. I'm so close, but the van's struggling, engine coughing like it's giving up. Cashin's breathing shallow, his rags soaked red. I'm screaming at him to hold on, but my eyes are on the road, on the shapes darting through the trees. The scratching's back, louder, and I hear glass shatter, my back window's gone. Something's reaching in, and I swerve hard, hearing a thud as it falls. The station's just ahead, but I know we're not safe yet. Not even close. The ranger station's lights are closer, but the van's dying, sputtering like it's got no fight left. I'm white-knuckling the wheel, my eyes locked on those flickering bulbs, willing us to make it. Cashin's slumped against the door, barely conscious, his breathing ragged. The flare's glow is fading behind us, but I still hear them. Those things, crashing through the brush, their movements too fast, too deliberate. My mind's a mess, flashing to Mara's scream, her shoe in the dirt, the blood on Cashin's van. I should have listened to her, should have left when she said. That was my mistake, and it's costing us everything. I pull into the station's lot, the van coughing to a stop. The building's dark, no rangers, no help, just a locked door and a dim porch light. My heart sinks. I shake Cashin, yelling his name, but he's out, his face gray. I grab the crowbar and jump out, dragging him with me. The night's alive with movement, those disturbing shapes circling just beyond the light. I bang on the station door, screaming for help, but it's useless. I think of that hiker story again, the one where they found nothing but bones. I'm not letting that be us. I prop Cashin against the wall, his blood slick on my hands. My flashlight's gone, but the porch light shows enough, eyes glinting in the dark, too many, too high up. I swing the crowbar, shouting to keep them back, but they're not scared. One steps into the light, tall, skeletal, its skin stretched tight over jagged bones. It's not human, not even close. My stomach churns, the horror of it locking my knees. Cashin groans, and I snap back, dragging him toward the van. I'm not thinking straight, just moving, my brain screaming to survive. I get him back inside, lock the doors, and try the engine. It turns over, barely. I'm about to peel out when I see it. Mara's sketchbook, lying in the dirt outside, open to that twisted figure. My chest tightens. I shouldn't, but I open the door, grab it, and jump back in. That's my second mistake. Something slams into the van, hard enough to crack the windshield. I floor it, the engine screaming, but the station's lot is a dead end. I'm trapped, the van surrounded by those things, their claws scraping, their laughs filling the air. I flip through the sketchbook, desperate for answers. Mara's drawings are worse than I thought. Pages of those creatures, some with notes. They hunt at night. They mimic voices. My blood runs cold. They called Cashin's name to lure us. I look at him, barely breathing, and realize he's not making it. I'm alone now, and these things know it. I think of that news clip, the family's RV torn apart. This is how it ends. I try the engine again, but it's dead. The windows are cracking, claws reaching through. I grab the flare gun from Cashin's lap, my hands shaking. One shot left. I fire it through the broken windshield, lighting up the lot. The creatures scatter, but only for a second. They're back, closer, their faces, if you can call them that, pressed against the glass. I'm screaming, swinging the crowbar, but it's no use. The van's rocking, metal tearing. I think of Mara, of Cashin, of every choice that led here. I should have left, should have listened. The glass gives way, and I feel something cold grab my arm, pulling hard. The flare's light fades, and the station's swallowed by darkness. I'm fighting, but it's pointless. They're too strong, too many. My last thought is of my van, my home, the life I loved. I hear that laugh again, low and cruel, as they drag me out. Cashin's still in the seat, unmoving, and I know Mara's gone too. The horror of it all crashes over me, a wave I can't escape. I made the wrong call, stayed too long, and now it's over. The Cascades claim another story, and mine's just one more tragedy in these woods. The tires of my van hum against the cracked pavement as I pull into a quiet clearing just off Route 12, nestled in Washington's Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. My name's Nora Kellen, I'm 31 years old, and I call Missoula, Montana, home when I'm not living out of my converted Dodge Ram. The van's my pride, oak cabinets, a fold-out bed, and a little stove I've cooked 100 meals on. I've been doing van life for 3 years, chasing sunsets and solitude. Tonight, I'm not alone though. My old friend Thane, a 34-year-old carpenter from Portland, is parked nearby in his beat-up Chevy van. His cousin, Lyra, 28, is with him. She's a botanist, always poking at plants like they're telling her secrets. This spot's a stunner, with towering pines and a creek gurgling nearby, but it's got a heavy vibe, like the forest's holding its breath. I found it on a Vanlife app, rated 5 stars for seclusion. Maybe too secluded. The sun's sinking fast, turning the sky a deep, bloody red. I step out, stretch, and feel a chill that's not just the evening air. Thane's already out, whittling a stick with his pocket knife, his beard catching the last light. Lyra's crouched by the creek, inspecting some moss, muttering about its unique structure. I grin, but something feels off, like we're being watched. I grab a soda from my cooler and toss one to Thane, who catches it without looking up. Lyra waves it off, too focused on her plants. We met at a music festival in Idaho 2 summers ago, bonded over campfire stories and bad coffee. Thane's the laid-back type, always fixing stuff with a grin. Lyra's intense, like she's solving a puzzle no one else sees. Me? I'm just trying to live free, away from Missoula's noise and my old office job. The van's my escape, my little world on wheels, but tonight it feels exposed, like a target in the dark. The forest's quiet, too quiet, like it's waiting for something. I suggest we start a fire, keep things cozy. Thane nods, but his eyes keep flicking to the trees. Lyra's still by the creek, her headlamp bobbing as she scribbles in a journal. I tease her about being a nerd, but her smile's tight, distracted. I start gathering kindling, trying to shake the uneasy feeling. The air smells like damp earth and something sharp, like ozone before a storm. I've camped in creepy places before, Wyoming's backroads, Arizona's deserts. But this is different, more disturbing. The fire's going now, crackling as I toss on a log. My van's parked a few feet away, its solar panels glinting faintly. Thane's rig is a mess of tools and lumber, a carpenter's dream on wheels. Lyra's got a corner in there, stuffed with plant samples and books. We sit around the fire, the warmth doing little to ease the chill in my gut. I try to keep it light, joking about Bigfoot, but Thane's not laughing. He's carving that stick too hard, with chips flying. Lyra's back, her journal clutched tight, her eyes darting to the shadows. I'm used to Vanlife's quirks, the odd noises, the loneliness, but this place feels alive in a bad way. I think about that horror movie The Blair Witch Project, all those kids lost in the woods, hearing things they couldn't explain. Stupid, right? This is just a forest. Still, my skin's prickling. Thane's whittling stops, his knife frozen mid-cut. You hear that? He asks, voice low. I strain my ears, nothing but the creek and the fire. Then I catch it, a faint hum, like a distant engine, but wrong, too organic. It's gone as fast as it came. I laugh it off, say it's probably a far-off truck, but my heart's not in it. Lyra's staring at the creek now, her headlamp off. That wasn't a truck, she says, barely a whisper. I ask what she means, but she shakes her head, scribbling in her journal again. I catch a glimpse, sketches of leaves, but also something else, a shape that's not a plant, all sharp angles. What's that? I ask, half joking. She snaps the journal shut, says it's nothing, but her hands are shaking. The fire's still going, but the darkness feels heavier, like it's pressing in. The stars are out, cold and sharp, but they don't calm me like usual. I should feel free, like I always do on the road, but tonight I feel caged. The trees seem to lean closer, their branches like fingers. I tell myself I'm being paranoid, that I've read too many scary stories online. Thane's quiet now, his knife back in his pocket. Lyra's muttering something about the moss, how it's not right. I lean closer, about to ask what's wrong, when a twig snaps, loud, deliberate, just beyond the firelight. My pulse spikes, but I force a grin. Probably a deer, I say, though it sounds hollow. Thane's hand is on his knife again, his eyes locked on the dark. Lyra's frozen, her journal slipping to the ground. The hum's back, faint but growing, vibrating in my chest. I tell myself we're fine, just 3 friends camping. But deep down, I know something's out there, and it's not friendly. The night's young, and it's already feeling like a mistake to stay. The fire's flickering low, and I'm kicking myself for not grabbing more wood when it was still light. The chill's sinking into my bones, making my fingers clumsy as I poke at the embers. Thane's pacing now, his boots crunching on the gravel, muttering about how we should have picked a spot with cell service. Lyra's still by the creek, her headlamp back on, but she's not studying plants anymore, just staring into the water, her journal forgotten in the dirt. I try to keep things chill, suggesting we make some coffee, but my voice sounds shaky, like I'm trying to convince myself everything's fine. The forest feels alive, and not in a good way, like it's waiting for us to screw up. I check my van's propane tank. Damn, it's lower than I thought. Must have cooked too many meals this week. I curse under my breath and decide to conserve it, skipping the coffee idea. Thane's not happy. He says we need to stay alert, and caffeine would help. Alert for what? I snap, sharper than I meant. He just points to the trees, his face tight. Lyra finally speaks, her voice barely audible over the creek. We need to leave. I ask why, but she just shakes her head, picking up her journal like it's her lifeline. Her eyes are wide, like she's seen something I haven't. I head to my van to check the battery, just to feel useful. The interior's cozy, but tonight it feels like a trap. I notice my side mirror's off, angled toward the woods instead of the road. I didn't touch it. My stomach twists, but I tell myself it's nothing, maybe the wind. I fix it, but now every creak in the van sounds loud, wrong. I think about that news story from Washington, a camper found dead near Mount Adams, his tent shredded. No explanation, just animal attack. I shake it off, but the thought sticks, disturbing and heavy. Thane's arguing with Lyra now, their voices sharp by the fire. I step out, trying to play mediator. Guys, relax, it's just the woods. Thane glares, says he saw something move out there, low and fast. Probably a fox, I say, but my gut's churning. Lyra's insistent we pack up and go, says the moss by the creek isn't normal, like it's growing too fast. I laugh, but it's forced. She's a botanist, she knows her stuff. I point out it's dark, and driving these winding roads now is risky. Plus, my propane's low, and I don't want to run out halfway to nowhere. We agree to stay till morning, but it feels like a bad call. I grab my flashlight and do a quick loop around the vans, looking for anything weird. The beam catches a mark in the dirt, deep, like a claw, too big for a bear. My heart skips. Could be old, but it looks fresh, and it's got this scary vibe, like it was left for us to find. I don't tell Thane or Lyra, they're spooked enough. I pocket a small rock from the ground, a nervous habit, and head back. The air's thick with that ozone smell now, mixed with something rotten, like decay. Back at the fire, Thane's trying to joke about his whittling, but his hands are shaking, carving too deep. Lyra's flipping through her journal, her headlamp catching sketches of that weird shape again. Angular, unnatural. Lyra, what's with that? I ask, trying to sound casual. She slams the book shut, says it's just a doodle, but her voice cracks. Then we hear it. That hum again, louder, like a swarm of bees but deeper, coming from the woods. My skin crawls. I say it's probably a generator, but there's nothing out here, no camps, no roads. The hum stops, and the silence is worse, pressing down like a weight. I think about those true crime podcasts, where people vanish in forests, their gear left behind like a taunt. My van's battery is fine, but I'm regretting not filling the propane earlier. Thane's pacing again, his knife out now, not whittling, just gripping it. Lyra's by the creek again, shining her light on the moss, muttering about how it's moving. I want to tell her she's crazy, but that hum's back, pulsing in my chest, and I swear I see something shift in the shadows. I'm about to suggest we pack up anyway when Lyra gasps, her headlamp dropping into the creek. She scrambles back, her face pale. It's not moss, she whispers, pointing at the water. I grab my flashlight, shine it where she's looking. The creek's edge is covered in something dark, writhing, like it's alive. My stomach lurches. This isn't normal, not even close. Thane's by her side now, knife raised, his voice low. We're not alone. The hum's louder, closer, and I hear something else, a rustle, deliberate, like footsteps circling us. My heart's pounding as I grab Lyra's arm, pulling her toward the vans. Thane's right behind us, his knife gleaming in the firelight. I'm kicking myself for staying, for thinking this was just another night on the road. The rustling's closer, and I catch a glimpse of something, tall, thin, moving wrong, in the trees. My flashlight shakes as I aim it, but it's gone. Lyra's muttering about the moss, how it's not natural, and Thane's saying we need to move now. I nod, but my van's propane is low, and I'm not sure we'll make it far. The night's turning scary fast, and we're in deeper than I realized. The rustling stops, and the silence is worse, like the forest holding its breath, waiting for us to move. I'm clutching my flashlight, its beam shaky as I scan the trees around our vans. Thane's got his knife out, his jaw tight, standing protectively near Lyra, who's still muttering about that writhing moss in the creek. My heart's hammering, and I'm cursing myself for picking this spot off Route 12. The air's thick with that rotten smell now, like something died nearby, and it's making my stomach churn. I think of those horror stories about Washington's forests, hikers disappearing, their campsites trashed. This feels too real, too disturbing to shrug off. I tell Thane and Lyra to get to my van, my voice barely steady. Lyra's shaking, her journal clutched to her chest, her headlamp gone in the creek. Thane nods, but his eyes are locked on the shadows, like he's seeing something I can't. I take a step toward my van, and that's when I hear it, a low, guttural scrape, like metal on bone, coming from the woods. It's not an animal, not a branch. It's deliberate, like something's testing us. My flashlight catches a glint, something metallic, maybe a tool, lying in the dirt near Thane's van. It wasn't there before. I grab it, a rusty, blood-crusted crowbar, half buried in the leaves. My blood runs cold. This isn't some hiker's lost gear, it's a warning. I think of that news clip about a missing couple near Mount St. Helens. Their car found with claw marks no bear could make. I shove the crowbar in my belt, not telling Thane or Lyra. They're freaked enough. Let's go. I whisper, but Lyra's frozen, staring at the creek. It's moving again, she says, her voice barely audible. I shine my light. The moss, or whatever it is spreading, crawling up the bank like it's alive. The hum's back, louder, vibrating in my chest like a warning. I grab Lyra's arm, pulling her toward my van. Thane's right behind, his knife raised, scanning the dark. We're halfway there when I hear it. A voice, mimicking mine, calling Thane from the woods. My skin crawls. It's not me, but it sounds close, too close. Thane stops, confused, and I have to yank him forward. It's not me. I hiss. I think of those old stories, things in these forests that lure people with voices. I always thought they were BS, but now they're horrifyingly real. We reach my van, and I fumble with the keys, my hands slick with sweat. The scraping sounds closer, circling us, and I swear I see something move. Tall, hunched, too fast for my light to catch. Lyra's muttering about the moss, how it's connected to whatever's out there. I want to tell her to shut up, but she's right. Something's wrong, deeply wrong. I unlock the van, shove Lyra inside, but Thane's still outside, staring at his van. My tools, he says, like they're worth dying for. Forget them. I snap, but he's already moving toward his rig. I yell for him to stop, but he's stubborn, darting to his van's open door. That's when I see it, something in the shadows, low and writhing, like the moss but bigger, human-shaped but not human. It's on Thane before I can blink, a mass of dark, pulsing tendrils wrapping his legs. He screams, a sound that cuts through me, raw and terrifying. I grab the crowbar and run, swinging at the thing. It recoils, but not before I see its face, or lack of one. Just a blank, writhing mass where eyes should be. My stomach lurches. This is no animal. Thane's on the ground, clawing at the dirt, his knife gone. I drag him back, the crowbar slick in my hand. Lyra's screaming from the van, banging on the window. The thing's still there, retreating into the trees, but I hear more, scraping, rustling, coming from all sides. My flashlight catches another shape, taller, its limbs twisting like vines. It's not alone. My mind's racing, thinking of those true crime cases, bodies found in these woods, torn apart. I get Thane to my van, his leg bleeding, torn by those tendrils. He's gasping, saying it burned him. I slam the van door, locking it, but the scraping's on the roof now, like claws testing the metal. Lyra's in the back, hyperventilating, clutching her journal. They're in the moss, she whispers, like it makes sense. I don't have time to argue. I start the engine, praying the propane holds. The headlights flare, and I see them. 3, maybe 4, their shapes wrong, moving like they're part of the forest itself. The horror hits me like a wave. These things aren't human, aren't natural. There's something else, something that's been here longer than us. Thane's groaning, his leg oozing something black, not just blood. I floor it, the van lurching onto the road, but the scraping follows, relentless. My heart's pounding so hard I can barely think. I'm kicking myself for staying, for ignoring Lyra's warnings, for thinking I could handle this. The things are keeping pace, their shapes darting through the trees, their hum filling the air. I glance at Thane. He's pale, his eyes fluttering. Lyra's muttering about the moss, how it's alive. The road's dark, twisting, and I know we're not out of this yet. The van's tires scream as I peel out onto Route 12, the engine roaring, but barely keeping up with my panic. Thane's slumped in the passenger seat, his leg oozing that black gunk, his breathing shallow. Lyra's in the back, clutching her journal like it's the only thing keeping her sane, muttering about the moss and how it's part of them. The forest blurs past, but those things, those writhing, faceless horrors, are still out there, their shapes darting through the trees, keeping pace. The scraping on the roof's gone, but I hear their hum, that bone-deep vibration, like they're inside my head. I think of those scary stories about Washington's woods, things that hunt at night. I'm not laughing now. I'm pushing the van to its limit, the speedometer creeping past 60 on a road meant for half that. The curves are brutal, and I nearly clip a tree, the branches clawing at the windows like they're alive. Thane groans, his hand gripping my arm. "Don't stop," he rasps, his voice weak. I nod, but my eyes are on the rearview mirror, expecting to see those things crawling up the road. My propane's low, and the gauge is blinking. Stupid mistake, not refilling in town. I think of that news clip about a hiker's van found empty near Randall, doors torn off. My stomach twists. That could be us. Something slams into the side of the van, hard enough to make it swerve. Lyra screams, dropping her journal, and I hear glass crack, one of the back windows. I yell at her to stay down, but she's scrambling, grabbing a flashlight. The beam catches something outside, tendrils, black and writhing, like the moss but bigger, reaching for the broken window. My heart's in my throat as I jerk the wheel, trying to shake it off. The van fishtails, gravel spraying, and I hear a thud, like something fell. But the hum's still there, louder, and I know they're not gone. I'm thinking of every horror movie I've ever seen, where running only makes it worse. But what choice do I have? Thane's fading, his leg looking worse, the black stuff spreading like ink. Lyra's shouting about a ranger station, maybe 5 miles west, near Packwood. It's our only shot. I floor it, the van rattling like it's gonna break apart. The road's a nightmare, twisting through the dark, and every shadow feels like one of those things. I catch a glimpse in the side mirror, something tall, its limbs bending wrong, loping alongside us. The sight's so disturbing I almost crash. Another hit rocks the van, this time from above, denting the roof. I swerve, but it's clinging on, scratching like it's trying to peel us open. Lyra's fumbling with her bag, pulling out a flare gun, Thane's, from his camping gear. "Use it," I yell, and she fires through the cracked window. The flare lights up the night, and I see them. 4 or 5, their bodies twisted, moss-like tendrils trailing from their limbs. They scatter, but not far enough. My propane gauge beeps, warning me we're almost out. I curse myself for not checking it sooner. The ranger station sign flashes in my headlights, maybe a mile away. Hope sparks, but it's fragile. The van's coughing, the engine struggling as the propane dwindles. Thane's barely conscious, his head lolling. Lyra's crying now, her flashlight shaking as she scans the windows. The hum's deafening, like it's coming from inside the van. I think of that missing hiker, his van gutted, no trace of him. My hands are slick with sweat, but I keep driving, weaving through the trees. Something slams the back door, cracking it, and I hear those tendrils slithering, reaching inside. I push the van harder, the tires screaming on the pavement. The station's lights are close, but the van's dying, lurching with every turn. Lyra's shouting, pointing at something in the road. A figure, tall and writhing, blocking our path. I don't think, just swerve, scraping the van against a tree. The impact jars us, but I keep going, the station's lot in sight. The thing on the roof slams down again, and I hear metal tear. Thane's muttering something, his voice too weak to make out. I'm screaming at him to hold on, but the horror's sinking in. We might not make it. The van skids into the station's lot, the engine sputtering to a stop. The building's dark, no rangers, just a faint porch light. My heart sinks, but I'm out of options. I grab the crowbar, drag Thane out, and yell for Lyra to follow. The hum's everywhere now, and I see them, shapes circling the lot, their tendrils glinting in the light. I bang on the station door, but it's locked, useless. Lyra's clutching the flare gun, her hands shaking. Thane's on the ground, his leg black and swollen, and I know we're running out of time. Something moves closer, its form twisting, like moss grown into a mockery of a person. I swing the crowbar, but it's fast, dodging with a sickening lurch. Lyra fires the last flare, and it hits the thing, setting it ablaze. It screams, a sound that's not human, not animal, and the others scatter. But the fire's spreading, catching the dry grass, and the van's too close. I drag Thane toward the station, my lungs burning, the heat licking at my back. The hum's fading, but I know they're still out there, waiting for us to make one last mistake. The fire's spreading fast, licking at the van's tires as I drag Thane toward the ranger station's porch. Lyra's right behind me, clutching her journal, her face streaked with tears. The flare's glow is dying, but the burning thing is still thrashing, its screams tearing through the night. The other creatures are out there, their shapes flickering in the trees, their hum pulsing like a heartbeat. Thane's barely breathing, his leg a mess of black, oozing tendrils that look like they're eating him alive. My heart's pounding, and I'm cursing every choice that led us here. Picking this spot, ignoring Lyra's warnings, thinking I could outrun the wild. I prop Thane against the station wall, banging on the door again, screaming for help. It's locked, dead silent inside, and the porch light's flickering like it's mocking us. Lyra's shaking, muttering about the moss, how it's their roots. I don't know what she means, but her journal's open now, pages filled with sketches of those things, moss-covered, faceless, alive in a way nothing should be. I think of that news story about a camper near Mount Rainier, found with strange growths on his body. My stomach churns. That's happening to Thane. I grab the crowbar, ready to break the station's window, but something slams into me, knocking me to the ground. It's one of them, its tendrils wrapping my arm, burning like acid. I swing the crowbar, hitting something soft, and it recoils, but not before I feel its weight. Heavy, wrong, like it's made of the forest itself. Lyra's screaming, firing the empty flare gun like it'll do anything. I scramble up, pulling her back, but Thane's not moving now, his eyes glassy, the black tendrils spreading across his chest. The horror's choking me. He's gone, and I didn't even see it happen. The fire's closer, the van engulfed now, my home burning to nothing. I grab Lyra, dragging her toward the station's side, looking for another way in. The creatures are circling, their hum deafening, their shapes blending with the smoke. I think of those old Washington legends, things that grow in the dark, feeding on anyone dumb enough to stay. I was dumb. I smashed the station's window with the crowbar, glass shattering, and pushed Lyra through. My arms burning where the tendrils touched, and I feel something crawling under my skin. Inside, the station's dark, cluttered with maps and old radios. I barricade the window with a desk, but the hum's still there, vibrating through the walls. Lyra's sobbing, her journal on the floor, open to a sketch of the creek, moss spreading like veins. "It's them," she whispers, like it's a revelation. I want to ask, but something slams the door, splintering it. My arm's throbbing, and I see it, black tendrils creeping under my skin, like Thane's. My heart stops. That's my mistake, getting grabbed, letting it touch me. I tell Lyra to hide, to find a way out, but she's frozen, staring at my arm. The door's buckling, and I hear that scream again, raw and inhuman. I grab a fire extinguisher, spraying it at the door, but it's useless. They're coming through. My vision's blurring, the tendrils in my arm pulsing, like they're taking over. I think of Thane, of my van burning, of every choice that led here. I should have left, should have listened. The door gives way, and they're inside, their forms writhing, moss dripping from their limbs. Lyra screams, but it's cut off as they grab her, tendrils wrapping her like vines. I swing the crowbar, but my arm's heavy, useless, the black spreading to my chest. The horror's overwhelming, a tidal wave I can't fight. They're on me now, their touch burning, pulling me down. My last thought is of Missoula, of the open road I loved, now lost to this nightmare. The station's swallowed by their hum, and I know it's over. The forest claims us, another tragedy in its roots, and I'm just one more fool who thought I could escape. The van's engine hums as I ease into a dirt pull-out off Highway 410, tucked in the shadow of Washington's Mount Rainier. My name's Soren Caldwell. I'm 27 years old, and I live out of my converted GMC Savannah when I'm not crashing at my mom's place in Bend, Oregon. The van's my haven, string lights, a hammock chair, and a fridge I rigged myself. I've been on the road for a year, chasing quiet spots like this one. Tonight, I'm with my friend Kale, a 30-year-old barista from Tacoma with a knack for storytelling. and his sister, Veda, 25, a nurse who's always got a first aid kit handy. Their old VW bus is parked a few feet away, its paint chipped but cozy. This spot's gorgeous, with the mountain looming like a giant in the dusk, but it's got a creepy edge, like the air's too still. I found it on a Vanlife subreddit, some guy raving about the views. Now I'm wondering if he mentioned the eerie vibe. The sky's turning a deep indigo, and I feel a shiver that's not just the altitude. Kale's already out, setting up a camp chair, his guitar leaning against his bus. Veda's checking her phone, frowning at the no-signal screen. I try to shake the unease, but it's sticking like damp clothes. I grab a water bottle from my cooler and offer one to Kale, who takes it with a grin. Veda's too busy pacing, muttering about needing to call her hospital shift. We met at a brewery in Bend last spring, hit it off over beers and road stories. Kale's the dreamer, always spinning tales. Veda's the practical one, always prepared. Me? I'm just a guy who ditched a warehouse job for the open road, craving freedom but not dumb enough to ignore my gut. Tonight, my gut's screaming something's off. The forest's quiet, like it's holding its secrets close. I suggest we get a fire going, keep the chill at bay. Kale nods, but his eyes keep drifting to the trees, like he's catching something I'm not. Veda's still pacing, her boots crunching on pine needles. I start gathering sticks, trying to ignore the way the shadows seem to shift. The air smells like sap and something sharp, like burnt rubber. I've parked in weird spots before, Utah's deserts, Idaho's backroads. But this place feels different, unsettling in a way I can't pin down. The fire sparks to life, casting a warm glow on our vans. Mine's got a mural of stars I painted myself. Kale's bus is a patchwork of stickers from every dive bar he's played. Veda's got a corner in there, stuffed with medical books and granola bars. We sit around the fire, but the warmth doesn't touch the cold knot in my chest. I crack a joke about mountain lions, trying to lighten the mood, but Kale's laugh is forced. Veda's staring at the flames, her fingers tapping her knee like a countdown. Vanlife is usually my escape, the one place I feel alive, but tonight it's like the forest is watching us. I think about that horror flick Deliverance, all those city folks out of their depth in the wild. Dumb comparison, but it's sticking with me. Kale's strumming his guitar now, a soft tune, but he stops mid-chord, head tilted. "You hear that?" he asks. I strain my ears. Nothing but the fire's crackle and the faint rush of a distant stream. Then I catch it, a low, rhythmic thump, like a heartbeat in the ground. It's gone fast, but it leaves my skin prickling. I tell myself it's just the wilderness, maybe a far-off machine, but my heart's not buying it. Veda's on edge now, her phone forgotten, her eyes scanning the dark. "That wasn't normal," she says, her voice sharp. I ask what she means, but she just shakes her head, grabbing a stick to poke the fire. I notice her hands are trembling. Kale's quiet, his guitar back in its case. The thump comes again, closer, and I swear I see something move in the trees. Too tall, too still. I laugh it off, say it's probably a deer, but my voice sounds thin. The stars are out now, sharp against the black sky, but they don't feel welcoming. I should be stoked, like I usually am on the road, but instead I feel exposed, like we're intruders. The trees seem to crowd closer, their branches like claws in the firelight. I tell myself I'm being paranoid, that I've read too many creepy Reddit threads. Kale's packing up his chair, saying we should turn in early. Veda's nodding, but her eyes are on the woods, wide and wary. I'm about to agree when I hear it again, that thump, steady, deliberate, coming from the dark. My pulse jumps, but I force a grin. Just a raccoon, right? I say, though I don't believe it. Kale's hand is on his pocket knife, his face pale. Veda's grabbing her first aid kit, like it'll help against whatever's out there. The thump stops, but the silence is worse, heavy and alive. I tell myself we're fine, just three friends camping under the stars. But deep down, I know something's watching, and it's not friendly. The night's just started, and it's already feeling like we shouldn't be here. The fire's burning low, and I'm kicking myself for not grabbing more kindling earlier. The cold's seeping through my jacket, making my hands stiff as I try to coax the flames higher. Kale's pacing now, his guitar forgotten, muttering about how we should have camped closer to civilization. Veda's sitting on a log, her first aid kit open, sorting bandages like it's a ritual to keep her calm. I try to keep things light, offering to make some instant noodles, but my voice sounds shaky, like I'm faking it. The forest around us feels alive, and not in a peaceful way. It's like it's waiting for us to mess up, and I'm starting to think we already have. I check my van's fuel gauge. Damn, it's lower than I thought. Must have burned too much cruising around Rainier's backroads yesterday. I mutter a curse and decide to save what's left, skipping the heater for tonight. Kale's not thrilled. He says we need to stay warm, stay sharp. Sharp for what? I snap, sharper than I meant. He just points to the trees, his face tight. Veda speaks up, her voice low. This place isn't right. I ask what she means, but she just shakes her head, repacking her kit with shaky hands. Her eyes are darting to the shadows, like she's expecting something to jump out. I head to my van to double-check the locks, needing something to do. The interior's cozy, my little sanctuary, but tonight it feels like a cage. I notice my driver's side window's cracked open an inch. I swear I closed it. My stomach twists, but I tell myself it's nothing, just forgetfulness. I shut it tight, but every creak of the van feels loud, wrong. I think about that news story from last year, a climber vanishing near Chinook Pass, his gear scattered like someone wanted it found. The thought's disturbing, sticking with me as I step back outside. Kale's arguing with Veda now, their voices sharp over the fire's crackle. I step in, trying to calm things down. Guys, it's just a creepy night, I say, but my gut's churning. Kale says he saw something out there. Tall, moving too smooth for an animal. Probably an elk, I offer, but it sounds weak. Veda's insisting we leave, says the ground feels wrong, like it's pulsing. I laugh it off. She's a nurse, not a geologist, but her face is dead serious. I point out it's pitch black, and driving these roads now with low fuel is asking for trouble. Bad call, I know, but I'm stubborn. We agree to stay till dawn, but it feels like a mistake. I grab my flashlight and walk the perimeter of our vans, checking for anything off. The beam catches something, a piece of rope, frayed and stained, tangled in a bush near Kale's bus. It's not ours, and it's got this scary vibe, like it was left on purpose. I don't tell them, they're already on edge. I shove it in my pocket and head back, my skin crawling. The air's thick with that burnt rubber smell now, mixed with something sour, like sweat. It's not right. Back at the fire, Kale's trying to lighten the mood, telling a story about a bar gig gone wrong, but his voice is shaky, his eyes on the trees. Veda's not listening. She's staring at her boots, like the ground's talking to her. I notice she's drawn something in the dirt with a stick, sharp, jagged lines, like a symbol. What's that? I ask, half joking. She wipes it away, says it's nothing, but her hands are trembling. Then we hear it again, that thump, louder, like a drum in the earth, coming from the woods. My heart skips. It's too rhythmic, too deliberate. I say it's probably a fallen branch, but my voice cracks. There's no wind tonight, no reason for it. Kale's got his knife out now, gripping it like a lifeline. Veda's clutching her first aid kit, her eyes wide. The thump stops, but the silence is heavier, like the forest holding its breath. I think about those true crime shows, campers disappearing in these mountains, their vans found empty. My fuel's low, and I'm regretting not topping off an Enumclaw. The fire's dying, and the darkness feels like it's closing in, alive and waiting. Veda's the first to move, grabbing her kit and heading for Kale's bus. We're leaving, she says, no argument allowed. I want to agree, but my van's fuel is too low to risk these roads, and I'm not abandoning my home. Kale's torn, looking between us and the dark. 10 more minutes, I say, knowing it's a bad idea but too proud to admit it. Veda glares, but she waits, her foot tapping like a timer. I head to my van to check the battery, my flashlight cutting through the night. That's when I see it, a fresh gouge in the dirt, deep and claw-like, right by my door. My breath catches, and I swing the light around, expecting something to launch. Nothing, just trees and shadows that feel too alive. I tell myself it's an animal, but my hands are shaking as I climb into the van. The battery's fine, but that thumps back, closer, shaking the ground under me. I'm about to call out to Kale when Veda screams, sharp and raw, from their bus. It's not a sound you fake. My heart's pounding as I grab my tire iron from under the seat and sprint toward them, the night turning terrifyingly real. Veda's scream cuts through the night, sharp and desperate, stopping my heart as I sprint toward Kale's bus, tire iron gripped tight. The fire's barely aglow now, leaving the clearing drowned in shadows. I yell for Kale, my voice swallowed by the forest. No answer. My flashlight beam shakes as it hits their VW bus, the side door wide open. Veda's first aid kit spilled across the dirt. My stomach drops. This is bad, horrifyingly bad. I think of that news story about a family vanishing near Mount Rainier, their campsite torn apart, no trace left. This feels like that, only it's happening to us. I reach the bus, my breath hitching as I peer inside. It's empty. Kale's guitar is on the floor, strings snapped. Veda's phone lies cracked near the seat, screen still glowing with a no-signal warning. My pulse is racing, the tire iron heavy in my hand. I swing the flashlight around, catching something moving, tall, too tall, slipping between the trees. It's not an animal. It moves with purpose, like it's stalking. The air's thick with that burnt rubber stench, now mixed with something coppery, like blood. Whatever's out here, it's close, and it's not friendly. I call their names again, my voice hoarse, but the forest eats the sound. That thumping's back, steady, like a heartbeat in the ground, vibrating through my boots. I step away from the bus, scanning the dark, and spot something. Veda's scarf, tangled in a bush, torn and stained. My chest tightens. She didn't drop it by accident. I think of those horror movies where the monster leaves clues, taunting its prey. I grab the scarf, my hands shaking, and notice a mark in the dirt nearby. Deep, like a claw, but too precise, almost human. It's disturbing, like it was carved to be seen. I'm torn. Stay and search, or run to my van. I can't leave them, not after that scream. I take a step toward the trees, tire iron raised, when I hear Kale's voice, faint, panicked, calling my name from the woods. My heart leaps, but something's off. It's too clear, like a recording. I think of those old Washington legends, things mimicking voices to lure people deeper. I hesitate, but another scream, Veda's, raw and terrified, pushes me forward. I'm running now, branches snapping under my boots, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly. The forest feels alive, the trees closing in like they're part of the threat. The thumping's louder, shaking the ground, and I hear something else, a low, rasping hiss, like air escaping a tire, but alive. I stumble into a small clearing and see Kale, slumped against a pine, his arm bleeding, his knife stuck in the dirt. Soren, he gasps, eyes wide with terror. They're not people. My brain stalls, they? I swing my light around, and for a split second, I see it. Tall, gaunt, its skin like cracked bark, eyes glinting white. It's gone before I can focus, but the image is seared into me, pure horror. Where's Veda? I demand, helping Kale up. He's shaking, barely able to stand. They took her, he chokes out, pointing shakily into the dark. My mind's racing, they? I think of those stories, things in these woods that aren't human, aren't animal. I pull Kale toward the vans, the tire iron slick in my hand. The hissing's closer now, circling us, and I hear footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, too many. My flashlight catches another figure, its limbs long and twitching, like branches in a storm. My stomach lurches. This isn't natural, not even close. We're halfway to the vans when that hiss turns into a laugh. Low, guttural, wrong. It's coming from everywhere, like the forest itself is mocking us. Kale's gripping my arm, his blood soaking my sleeve. We gotta go, he whispers, his voice breaking. I nod, but my van's still a ways off, and the darkness feels like it's alive, pressing in. I'm kicking myself for staying, for ignoring Veda's gut, for thinking I could handle this. The thumping's under us now, like the ground's alive, and I see eyes, white, unblinking, glinting in the trees. I drag Kale faster, my flashlight flickering, threatening to die. The bus is in sight, but something's wrong. Its tires are shredded, like something clawed them apart. My van's still intact, but I hear that laugh again, closer, and something brushes my leg, cold and rough like bark. I swing the tire iron, hitting nothing but air, but the hiss recoils. Kale's stumbling, his arm a mess, and I know we're running out of time. I think of that missing family, their campsite a wreck. Was this what got them? My flashlight dies, plunging us into darkness. I fumble for the van's door, Kale leaning on me, his breathing ragged. The hissing's all around, and I feel something watching, waiting for us to slip up. I get the door open, shove Kale inside, and climb in after, locking it. My hands are shaking as I grab the keys, praying the fuel holds. The thumping's deafening now, shaking the van, and I hear claws, or something, scraping the roof. My heart's pounding as I realize we're not alone, and whatever's out there is done playing. The terror's real, and it's only getting worse. The van's engine roars as I slam the key in, praying the fuel holds out. Cale's slumped in the passenger seat, his arm bleeding bad, staining the upholstery. The thumping's under us, shaking the van like the ground's alive, and that rasping hiss is everywhere, closing in. I hit the gas, tires screeching on the dirt as we peel out onto Highway 410. The forest blurs past, but those things, those bark-skinned, white-eyed horrors, are still there, their shapes darting through the trees, keeping pace. My heart's pounding so hard I can barely think. I think of those scary campfire stories about Rainier's forest ghosts. They're not stories anymore. I'm pushing 55 on a road meant for 30, the van rattling like it's gonna fall apart. Cale's muttering Veda's name, his voice weak, begging me to go back for her. I want to scream that we're no good to her dead, but I choke it down. The fuel gauge is blinking, my dumb mistake, not filling up in green water. The headlights catch something, a figure, tall and twitching, standing in the road. I swerve, the van skidding, branches scraping the side like claws. That laugh, guttural and wrong, follows us, echoing through the trees. I glance in the rear view, nothing but darkness, but I know they're there. Something slams into the van's side, hard enough to crack the passenger window. Cale yells, clutching his arm, and I see it. Tendrils, like twisted roots, snaking through the crack. My stomach lurches. It's like the forest itself is attacking. I jerk the wheel, trying to shake them off, but they're relentless, clawing at the glass. I think of that news clip about a hiker near Crystal Mountain. His truck found mangled, no body. My hands are slick with sweat, but I keep driving, the road twisting through the dark. Cale's fumbling with his knife, trying to cut the tendrils, but he's too weak. I remember a ranger station off 410, maybe 3 miles west. It's our only shot. The van's struggling, the fuel gauge screaming now. That hiss turns into a screech, and something lands on the roof, denting it inward. The van swerves as I fight to keep control, the tire iron rolling uselessly on the floor. Cale's eyes are glassy, his arm oozing something dark, not just blood. "They're in me," he whispers, and my blood runs cold. I think of those old Washington tales, things that claim you. I floor it, the engine coughing, praying we make it. Another hit rocks the van, this time from behind, shattering the back window. I yell at Cale to stay down, but he's barely conscious, his knife slipping from his hand. The screeching's louder, and I see them in the side mirror. 2, maybe 3, their white eyes glinting, their bodies like twisted trees. The horror's choking me. These aren't animals, aren't people. There's something else, something ancient. I swerve again, hearing a thud as one falls off, but the scraping's back, claws tearing at the roof. The ranger station's sign flashes in the headlights, half a mile. I push the van harder, the tires screaming, the engine sputtering. Cale's not talking anymore, just wheezing, his arm black and swollen. I think of Veda, her scarf in my pocket, torn and stained. Did they get her like this? The road narrows, and something darts across it. Fast, too fast, its limbs bending wrong. I don't stop, can't stop. The station's lights flicker ahead, a faint hope in this nightmare. But the van's dying, lurching with every turn, and the fuel's almost gone. I'm cursing myself for every choice, picking this spot, ignoring Veda's warnings, thinking I could outrun this. The scraping's relentless, and I hear glass crack again, the driver's side now. Tendrils snake in, cold and rough, brushing my arm. I swing the tire iron, hitting something solid, and the screech cuts off, but not for long. Cale's muttering, his voice barely audible, something about roots in the ground. My heart's in my throat as I see the station's lot, the building dark but close. I skid to a stop, the van stalling, and grab Cale, dragging him out. The hiss is everywhere, and I see them, shapes circling the lot, their eyes like beacons in the dark. I pull Cale toward the station, my legs burning, the tire iron heavy in my hand. The door's locked, the window's dark, no rangers. I bang on it, screaming, but it's useless. The tendrils are back, slithering across the ground, like the forest's reaching for us. Cale's slipping, his weight dragging me down. I prop him against the wall, his eyes fluttering shut. The screeching's closer, and I see one of them. Tall, its body like cracked bark, moving like it's part of the earth. I swing the tire iron, but it's fast, dodging with a sickening lurch. The station's porch light flickers, casting shadows that make my skin crawl. I'm out of ideas, my arms stinging where the tendrils touched. Kale's not moving now, his arm a mess of black, root-like veins. The horror's overwhelming, but I can't give up. I smash the station's window with the tire iron, glass shattering, and climb through, pulling Kale after me. The tendrils are inside now, slithering across the floor, and I know we're not safe. The screeching's deafening, and I feel the ground thump, like the forest is alive and angry. Inside the ranger station, it's dark, cluttered with maps and old radios, but it's no sanctuary. The tendrils are everywhere, creeping through the broken window, wrapping the walls like vines. Kale's slumped against a desk, his breathing gone, his arm a mass of black roots. My heart's breaking, but I can't stop. Those things are coming. The screeching's so loud it's in my bones, and the thumping shakes the floor like the earth itself is hunting us. I think of Veda, her scream, her scarf in my pocket. I should have listened, should have left when she said. That was my first mistake, and it's cost us everything. I grab a chair, barricading the window, but it's pointless. The tendrils are tearing through, fast and alive. My arm's burning now, the spot where they touched me pulsing with black veins. I realize, horrified, it's spreading like it did with Kale. I think of that news story, campers found near Rainier, their bodies overgrown with something unidentified. That's us now. I shake Kale, yelling his name, but he's gone, his eyes empty. The screeching turns into that laugh again, low and cruel, like they know they've won. I stumble to a closet, hoping for a weapon, anything. Inside, I find a flare gun, old, dusty, but loaded. My hands shake as I grab it, my arm throbbing, the black veins creeping to my shoulder. The tendrils are inside the station now, wrapping the desk, reaching for Kale's body. I fire the flare at the window, the light blinding, and one of the creatures screams, a sound that's not human, not animal. It recoils, burning, but the others keep coming, their wide eyes locked on me. The fire's spreading, catching the station's walls, and I know I've made another mistake, trapping myself. I drag Kale's body to the back door, hoping for an escape, but the tendrils are there too, blocking it. My vision's blurring, the black in my arm pulsing like a heartbeat. I think of those legends, things that grow in these woods, claiming anyone who stays too long. I was that idiot, thinking Vanlife made me untouchable. The fire's roaring now, smoke choking the air, and the creatures are closer, their bodies twisting, roots dripping from their limbs. I swing the tire iron, but my arm's heavy, the black veins slowing me down. The station's burning, the heat searing my skin. I'm coughing, my lungs screaming, but I can't stop. I think of Veda, of Kale, of my van. My home, probably torn apart by now. The tendrils grab my leg, burning like acid, and I fall, the tire iron clattering away. The screeching's deafening, and I see them. Dozens of white eyes, their bodies blending with the smoke. My arm's useless now, the black roots spreading to my chest. I realize, too late, what Veda meant about the ground pulsing. It's them, part of the forest, part of the earth. I crawl toward the door, the fire licking at my back, but the tendrils are faster, wrapping my arms, pulling me down. My last thought is of Bend, of the open road, of the freedom I chased. The horror's complete, a nightmare I can't wake from. I should have left, should have trusted Veda's gut. The creatures are on me now, their roots sinking into my skin, claiming me like they claimed Kale, like they claimed Veda. The station collapses in flames, and the forest swallows us, another tragedy buried in its roots. My story just one more lost to the dark.